It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City. Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You just woke up in the greatest country in history. Let's get to work. We got a whole show planned for you of engaging discussions, critical analysis, and most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because unlike those other shows out there, this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. We've got a jam-packed show for you. John Decker, White House Correspondent, is going to join us in just a second. What is President Biden's legacy going to be? Gee golly, maybe it was the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Maybe it was the pardoning of his sons. Maybe it was all the spending on, quote, inflation reduction that helped us out. What is Joe Biden's legacy going to be? I love to hear from you all. Text messages are open as well. Those text messages, by the way, come right into our studio, 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. If you want to join the conversation, give us a call at 303-696-1971. After that, we're going to talk with Rory O'Neill about tariffs. Donald Trump is threatening to slap some tariffs on many imports starting on Inauguration Day. Well, he's got a rundown of a list of things that you may want to consider buying now before prices go up. Then Adam Frisch is going to join us. Very interesting Washington Post editorial about maybe he's learned some things that Democrats could use in upcoming elections. If you remember, Adam Frisch ran against Lauren Boebert, lost by only 500 votes, and then ran again against Jeff Hurd, lost there. But former member of the Aspen City Council, going to talk to us on what Democrats learned after the last election, both nationally and here in Colorado. And then Trump and Trudeau dinner, Trump threatening Hamas if they don't release the hostages. Holy cow, we've got a whole lot to talk about. But wild Monday Night Football game last night, and the halftime show was incredible. It's like Walmart finally stepped up after owning the Broncos for all these years. Actually put some money into the thing.
Yeah, that looks pretty cool on TV. That was great. That
was very cool.
Yeah, that was surprising.
And a great game for the D-Bronx, man. They're looking great this year.
It was, it was fantastic. That was a fun game to watch. And again, it's the defense didn't show up, but also showed up. And so that was the interesting thing there.
Pick sixes.
That was nice. And then the one at the end, too, to kind of seal it off. So they did just enough to win. And that's okay. That is okay. And that's exactly where the Broncos are at this point in time. They're not world beaters. They're not challenging for a Super Bowl. They are a team that needs to do just enough to maybe squeak into the playoffs. That's our level at this point.
Hey, I'm happy to have a winning season.
Oh,
goodness
absolutely.
gracious.
Yes.
It was bad for a few years.
I'm happy to have some hope. That's the other part. There's really some hope about what is coming in the future, too, for the first time in at least 4 or 5 years, that we may have actually settled on a quarterback that Cortland Sutton is producing as we should. We still don't really have a productive tight end, but we've sort of seemed to figure out a 3-headed running back, which is okay.
Yeah.
There are some advantages to that because, not everybody can have someone like a Derrick Henry, so that's okay. And especially given what you saw with local boy Christian McCaffrey over the weekend with the problems he's been having, that he just comes back from a foot issue and now he's got a bad knee injury. So that idea of the bellwether back can be a problem in this league at this point. So maybe the 3-headed monster is the best way to go about doing it, at least right now. So again, hope. There's some sunshine on the horizon for Broncos fans, which is great.
Use some hope.
Yes, we can. Yes, the Broncos have been bad for so long. This is nice. This is a nice feeling.
It was a lot of fun to watch, and we've got him back. News and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, guys.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving weekend?
Had a great Thanksgiving weekend. Just flew in early, probably about 4 or 5 hours ago. But it was great. It was great because I watched the entire game. That was an entertaining game, man.
It really was.
And both, you know what? Both quarterbacks, I give them credit, man. I mean, they're obviously Jameis Winston has been through a lot. But Bo Nix, man, more I watch him, I'm impressed.
Yeah. And I was super happy for Jameis Winston. For me has been something that this entire season, since Deshaun Watson went down, I am so happy. I mean, I am not a Cleveland Browns fan, but right now I am a Jameis Winston fan. I will cheer for him when he's on the field because, again, Deshaun Watson, everything that he's accused of and everything else is just deplorable.
Yeah,
but Winston, when he went through the difficulty in Tampa Bay, and he's their number one pick, he's their guy, and it doesn't work out, and they actually jettison him to get Tom Brady. So that's got to feel awful. And then he ends up as a backup, and he goes to the Saints. And I heard him talking a couple of weeks ago about how cool that was, that it was a real slice of humble pie, but he had to look at it as, okay, I still am in the league. I still have a chance here. And if I'm a backup, I'm a backup. But he said, more importantly, he sat down and he watched Sean Payton and Drew Brees. And he said those two taught him how to be a professional quarterback. When do you show up? What do you do in the film room? How much do you do when you're not there? How much time do you spend in the playbook? What do you do talking to the linemen? What do you do talking to the wide receivers? What do you do when you see this on the field? How do you need to diagnose plays? He said he just sat in the film room and shut up and just absorbed everything he could. And he knew this was an opportunity where he still had the physical ability to possibly get another starting job. But more importantly, he was going to school. He said he had a chance to learn from two of the best. And he was going to take this opportunity so that the next time he got a chance to start, he was going to make sure that he fulfilled the promise. And he's doing it. I think it's a wonderful story. I'm so happy for him.
He's hard not to like. He really is.
Yeah, he really is.
And he was kind of made out to be a cartoon, 4 or 5 years ago with all the interceptions. But man, physically, he is just so gifted. But now he's learning the craft and the art. And to get out of if he gets out of the pocket, get rid of the ball, don't take the sack. Both those guys doing a really nice job. Nix, man. I mean, the sky is the limit for him. I love watching him.
And he seems to be what I like. And where Jameis, in my mind, last night, some of those interceptions were due to, again, misses, but also trying to let your physical abilities overcome some problems, trying to squeeze the ball into certain places that maybe it shouldn't, making some. But I think Bo Nix plays inside the system. Bo Nix understands I don't have to do this. And he'll take his shots, but
absolutely.
He's more of a system quarterback at this point.
And Nick Benito, you got to give him credit. Both McMillan, but Benito, man, he just sneaked. He didn't see him sneaking up there.
No.
And what great timing. He kind of telegraphed the pass and he just pounced on it.
Yeah.
Wow. He had a great game, though.
He did. Benito's one of those guys that now, if you're on offense, you better figure out where he is before the ball snapped.
Absolutely.
He's that disruptive at times. And so if you're on that offensive line, you better figure out where Benito is. Otherwise, he is going to cause problems for you.
And guys, this was like the perfect timing. That plane took off basically when kickoff.
How cool!
And then we landed in the game.
So you just watched it the whole time.
Yeah, man, awesome. It was awesome. I mean, I've never had that happen.
Oh, never.
It was pretty cool. And I hate flying.
And then you had to drive home and you had to get ready for the show.
That's right.
Did you go to sleep at all?
I got about an hour and a half.
I didn't just like college days.
True professional.
Yes.
I didn't wash some dishes. Don't tell my wife, but then she found out when I came home because they left earlier. Oh man, I was in trouble.
Oh, they sat for like 4 days.
Yeah, she was not happy.
It really is college.
I'm gonna. If you see me begging here, if she pops in, I'm on my knees begging for her forgiveness.
That's the reason.
You guys understand. That's the reason.
Speaking of spouses, pro tip. Made this yesterday. Put this out on X.
Okay.
I'm always able to get prime seating at my wife's favorite restaurant for Valentine's Day. Because I make the reservation the first week of December.
Oh, that's smart.
Now is the first week of December. Gentlemen, now is the time to make the phone call.
That's very smart.
Awesome.
That's very smart.
That sounds like a live read right there.
Yes, it does.
Need to find that restaurant, talk to him. That's great. What a great idea.
Very smart.
I'm gonna steal it from you. All right, 28 and clear. outside in Denver, expecting a high of 60 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, DJT warning Hamas there will be hell to pay unless they release the hostages. He posts that, and he says that he will unleash it if they do not. A man is dead following an officer-involved shooting in Lakewood. Police were called to investigate a case of trespassing early Monday near Belmar Shopping Center. Investigators say the officers encountered a man who pointed a gun at them, leading them to use deadly force. The man died after he was taken to the hospital. 2 officers are on leave as a part of the investigation into the shooting. A Denver man is facing charges in Aurora for a Thanksgiving shooting that put him in the hospital. Investigators believe the 32-year-old, Arden Varupa, argued with his girlfriend before firing at several vehicles outside an apartment complex. Police officers reportedly found Varupa at a nearby bus stop holding a gun that he refused to put down. He allegedly fired at the officers several times before they shot and wounded him. He's facing multiple counts of attempted murder of a police officer. Senate Democrats will hold their leadership elections today on Capitol Hill. The number 3 spot is currently held by retiring Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar is widely expected to take the position, with New Jersey Senator Cory Booker taking the 4th spot.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
That goes on and on and on. What a joke. You can hear the double talk by the left, and the White House denying President Biden lied when he previously said he would not pardon his son. Hunter spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters on Air Force One that Biden came to this decision this weekend. She also claimed that Hunter Biden was being singled out with his process.
Blake, I got some audio from The View, by the way.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, here, listen to this. They're coming around. They're finally getting it. Here's The View yesterday. Oh, Blake, or Billy. All right, we'll get to it later.
I don't know why it's not playing.
The only reason that
Donald Trump
was gone after and charged, indicted, and found guilty was because his name wasn't Joe Smith. It was
Donald Trump.
And that's the truth of it.
See, they're finally waking up.
That's great, man. You got that from Monday, huh?
Yeah.
That is awesome. Got to play that all morning. Scott Jennings, he tries to set the left straight again on CNN.
This idea that Hunter Biden is being selectively prosecuted. Now, one of the core criticisms of the Republicans, and Trump specifically, during the Biden years, is that the Department of Justice is engaging in selective prosecution investigations of Republicans. And today, what I hear Democrats saying is, you know what, you're right. Joe Biden's DOJ does engage in selective prosecutions, which is exactly why we need people to come in and clean it out now. There seems to be bipartisan consensus.
Yep. All right. President-elect Trump tabbing the investment broke banker Warren Stevens as U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom. Stevens served as president, chair, and CEO of his company, Stevens Incorporated, for 38 years. Let's see. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills. Locally owned and operated since 1954. Online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Broncos with the 2-point lead late in the game, and Jaquan McMillan steps up. And right when that happens, my computer freezes, but you know what happens. Jaquan McMillan rips it off. Huge interception. Pick 6, second of the night. 41-32 over the Browns. Jameis Winston, 3 interceptions, 2 pick sixes. Nick Bonito with the other one, along with another sack to make 11 on the year. Marvin Mims with a 93-yard touchdown reception for Bo Nix, who threw for 294 yards, 2 interceptions. Jaleel McLaughlin, 84 yards rushing. And the Broncos now 8-5 heading into their bye week. 26 in Parker. That's a huge win last night for them. 25 in Arvada, 28 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue Tuesday morning. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
High pressure is firmly anchored across the Rocky Mountain West to the West Coast, so we'll be protected under this veil of high pressure for several days before the weather changes late Sunday into Monday back to a wintry pattern. Until then, it will be mild and dry, upper 50s to near 60 today, low to mid-50s in Denver on Wednesday. In the 50s Thursday, 50s to near 60 Friday and Saturday, increasing clouds Sunday. Sunday night, Monday, our next chance of snow. Meteorologist Don Day on the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Joining the Jeff and Bill Show, John Decker, you know the name, White House Correspondent. We're going to talk. John, President Biden is making a last-minute push to protect his policies before leaving office. What is he trying to protect, and how is he going to do it? Good morning.
Well, first of all, this story comes out just a few days after that presidential pardon was given to his son, Hunter, and with about 1.5 months left in his presidency, there likely will be other presidential pardons. And I think the big question many people are asking, including myself, is will there be another pardon for another member of the Biden family before Joe Biden leaves office? That, to me, is a big unknown as to whether or not someone like, for instance, Joe Biden's brother, Jim Biden, who was involved in business deals with Hunter during the course of the past 10 years, receives a presidential pardon. But as far as the legacy goes and what Joe Biden would like to accomplish between now and January 20th, I think there are 3 big items that he'd like to see get done. One is increased funding for weapons for Ukraine. And in fact, a big announcement yesterday made by the National Security Advisor on that front, pressing for stability in Gaza, I should say, that war going on for well over a year now between Israel and Hamas, and winning confirmation of roughly a dozen federal judges. The judicial confirmations could bring Joe Biden close to the 234 that Trump accomplished during his first term in office.
That's a lot. Talking to John Decker, White House correspondent. So you mentioned stability in Gaza, Hamas, Israel. What's the response been in Washington, D.C. to Donald Trump's tweet yesterday, or Truth Social post, about the hostages?
Well, there is talk, and I think there should be talk. That was a very strong message that was delivered by Donald Trump yesterday. I think that sends a very strong message to the terrorist group Hamas. And I think it probably makes them wonder, what does Donald Trump have in mind based upon what he put out there on Truth Social once he takes office? And I think he's essentially given an ultimatum to Hamas, release those hostages or risk, some sort of military action taken by the U.S. against Hamas, our overwhelming military force being used against Hamas. So we'll just have to wait and see where that goes.
Talking to John Decker, White House correspondent. So, John, I know you've got to run here. Last question. Joe Biden, 4 years in the White House as president, 8 years as vice president. Do you think he's looking back on his impact fondly? Do you think he thinks he made the impact he wanted to do?
Well, I think so. He can always point to some of the accomplishments that will be very difficult to get undone, including passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law that took place during his first year in office. And of course, he was part of the Obama administration. And, the Affordable Care Act is now the law of the land. So those are 2 big accomplishments that he can certainly point to during his time, serving in the White House.
John Decker, White House correspondent. Thanks so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
So this is where I'd love to hear from people, especially the phone lines. Give us a call. What do you think of Joe Biden's legacy? Now, when I think back to him as president, you've got everything from the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle, Ukraine, what seems like an endless war. Can they work that out? Skyrocketing inflation, well over 20% through his 4-year reign. How about hiding his infirmity from everybody when, his colleagues say, oh, he's doing backflips, he's doing great, he can do handstands. Well, coming up with the most complicated, policy issues. The fact they hid his infirmity, and then the pardoning of Hunter Biden. I don't think his legacy is all that impressive. I think he's going to go down as one of the most useless, if not destructive, presidents we've ever had in this nation. But prove me wrong. Give me a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Does Joe Biden have a good legacy? What do you think, Billy?
Yeah, it's questionable at best. It's mostly going to be forgettable. I think there are going to be some things that may resonate both positively and negatively. The thing for me is I think it's actually going to be Merrick Garland at the DOJ that is going to be looked at more negatively than Joe Biden's presidency will. I think there are going to be some stuff from the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the other policies that he passed that are going to end up being a net positive as long as some of the funding continues. But overall, I think it's going to be largely forgettable and largely viewed through a lens of either Republican or Democrat. That if you are a Republican, you're going to view it as this lawless administration that tried to persecute Donald Trump and Trump supporters. And if you're a Democrat, you're going to view it as an administration that was too weak and feckless in order to hold Donald Trump accountable. And I think that's the direction it's going to go long term. I don't think that in the history books, it's going to be remembered as anything relatively significant. In fact, going back, he will be the placeholder between the two Trump administrations. That's how he is going to be remembered in the history books. I think he's going to get maybe 2-3 sentences total. That's it, because there just isn't anything that, in my opinion, is that impactful. And he is going to be the placeholder in between the two Trump administrations inside of the history book. That's how he is going to be remembered. And in part, that's his fault. Absolutely.
Wow. Very, very interesting insight, Billy. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Look, somebody's making an impact, an actual impact, and helping people in the city of Denver. Rocky Mountain Dental Group and my good friend, Dr. Mike. Look, I've had to spend a lot of time in dentist chairs. It's a genetic thing, not blessed with good teeth. Had pretty much every procedure you can imagine out there. But Dr. Mike helps people look and feel great. He helps people like you and me feel amazing by providing the best dental care available. You can see for yourself all the 5-star reviews at RockyMountainDentalGroup.com. Here's one. Every single person in this office is delightful. Their knowledge and consultative approach to dental care is fantastic. Will highly recommend to everyone I know. Look, if you're in your 40s or 50s and you've got receding gums, you've got a bigger problem than you may think. It's not just about your gums receding, because what happens when that takes place is that the bone in your jaw starts to break down and you can start to lose teeth. So if you've got receding gums, it's critical to address this issue promptly. Plus, if you've got 40, 50 more years of your life, you got to enjoy it. Dr. Mike is a top-tier expert in the Chow pinhole surgical technique. This method requires no cutting, no sutures, and virtually no downtime. The pinhole surgery is so painless that many clients go on to have other areas of their mouth treated as well. They also offer sedation if you have any apprehension at all. So schedule a free consultation with Dr. Mike. Call 303-233-1335 or visit RockyMountainDentalGroup.com, RockyMountainDentalGroup.com to book your free consultation today. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We just spoke with John Decker, White House correspondent. President Biden making a last-minute push to protect his policies, trying to instill his legacy. And my question is, what legacy is that? Is it the debacle of the Afghanistan withdrawal, the forever war we seem to be in now with Ukraine? How about a 20% inflation over 4 years? Thanks to him. That was great. How about hiding his infirmity from everybody? That was great. His vice president and her disastrous presidential run. Or is it him pardoning not only Hunter Biden, but maybe, as John Decker hinted, somebody else in the family, maybe his brother getting just an unconditional decade get out of jail free card pardon. But let's go to the phone lines and talk about where Biden ranks in his presidency, maybe along with others. Tony Littleton, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Hey, good morning. So I think Billy hit on an important point. If you're a Democrat, you're going to have one view, and if you're Republican, you're going to have another. And so when it comes to this evaluation, I think I've mentioned it to you in the past. I really lean on this group of historians, about 160 of them, that evaluate both Republican and Democratic presidencies, and they've shown they're pretty apolitical. They have Reagan at 9, so they can't all be liberal. And I think that group is probably going to place Biden somewhere in the top half of all presidencies, because they're going to look, the things that they're going to look at is he took over during COVID, and the economy and it was a disaster. And he leaves office with about 2% inflation, 4% unemployment. Both those are targets right on target with the Federal Reserve policies. The growth rate, the GDP, is going to be somewhere around 2.8. Wages growing faster than inflation. So those economic factors are going to be a strong positive. In fact, that's going to weigh against Trump. I mean, he's got to see if he can even hold them, let alone try to improve on them. So I think he's going to get points there. I think they also put a lot of weight on the idea of America's leadership role in the world. And so the action around Ukraine is going to be a plus for him, and depending on how it ends up, will be a negative for Trump if he indeed just hands it over to Russia. He's also going to get credit for bringing chip production back to the United States, especially if China takes over Taiwan. We're all going to be grateful that he moved as much chip manufacturing as he has. And then finally, on that front, as well as just not just chips. He's put in place the largest infrastructure program since the Eisenhower administration. So those are the things that I think are going to put him in the top half. They evaluate after the end of every presidency. So depending on what Trump does in his second term, either bump Biden down or bump Biden up. And
Tony,
so
do you
we'll
think those professors will weigh into account the open borders and the 10 million or so, 12 million or so illegal immigrants that came in under his?
I think that'll clearly be a negative, and until we have a program, an immigration program, not just an ad hoc approach that we've currently got, we're not going to fix it. But yes, that will weigh against him, and I think pardoning his son will weigh against him. Not that that's any worse per se than all the pardons that Trump issued in his first term of Stone and Bannon and on and on and on. All these guys that were the basic kind of the evidence of the case of just how closely did Trump work with Russia. Those people all were pardoned, and none of them cooperated. All of them were charged. All of them were pardoned. And so, in the context of the pardoning, I do think he's going to take a hit for having done it, but I don't think it's going to be a huge hit.
Why?
And by the way,
why do you think he did the decade-long pardoning? I mean, all of us, including Donald Trump, said, filling out the form, going to jail for that. Maybe the tax stuff, we could get on board with pardoning on that, but just a blanket decade-long pardon? Why did that take place?
So I think that the reason being, all right, just a fact. Trump is a bit of an authoritarian, and in the way he talks, the way he acts, he's a bit of an authoritarian. He's putting in place a guy at the FBI who has written on this. Has written a list of 60 people he's going to go after and charge, and Biden's son is one of those people that he's going to chase after. Now, Billy has explained, I know, over and over to you, as have I, the whole story about Burisma is just not true. It's just not true. And they've tried to explain it to you, and yet you don't really grasp that, and nor will Patel. Patel will run down that same path, and even if he's found innocent, he's going to be facing tons of legal charges and liability in terms of just trying to defend himself. In fact, I don't think he's done pardoning. I wouldn't be surprised if Biden doesn't come out and pardon 1,000 people. Every single member of the press, because that's another group that Trump wants to go after. If I were him, I would pardon every single member of the press for any crime.
Tony, you seem to be admitting that the Department of Justice can be politicized.
It certainly can be politicized, and I know you believe, and again, this historians won't. You believe that Biden politicized the Justice Department, and you can ask some pro-life. This is your approach. You laugh. You start laughing when you have no argument. You have no evidence, not one shred of evidence
that the FBI
you don't
was
have
politicized.
You don't have one.
I think there's some pro-life activists out there that are sitting in prison that would beg the difference. I think there's some January 6th folks that would beg the difference on that.
I know you make the argument that Biden politicized the Justice Department, and not one shred of evidence has been discussed. Oh, hold on. Let me just finish the statement. Not one shred of evidence has been presented that he ever even engaged with the Justice Department in any of these cases. And you laugh. It's your typical, when you don't have any evidence, you start laughing. Well, there is no evidence.
When the evidence is overwhelming and you seem to ignore it, Tony.
Think about this. Hold on. The Republican Congress spent the last couple years hunting Biden down in every way, shape, or way they could to try and impeach him. And this turned out a whole lot like the whole deal with Hillary Clinton. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And historians, that's what this was about. Historians know that. They know that. There is no evidence. You think there's evidence, but you have no evidence. You just think there's evidence.
There's plenty of pro-life activists, January 6th activists, and even school board moms that have been chased down by the FBI. It was absolutely weaponized against conservatives. Your fear that Donald Trump is going to somehow utilize the FBI to go after his political opponents shows. It shows that it can be weaponized against people. I think Kash Patel and Donald Trump are far more motivated to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, and it's time for him to go. He also appointed Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions.
Biden didn't come in and fire Christopher Wray. Biden honored exactly what the program is, a 10-year term. He was appointed by Donald Trump. He left him in place the whole time. And now Donald Trump is going to come in, and he's at least claiming he's going to come in and fire Christopher Wray.
Oh, yeah.
Because he wants somebody who's more aggressive. So he got Christopher Wray wrong. In this case, because Christopher Wray didn't go chase after his political enemies, then that means he's not the right guy. Well, now Trump is not
chasing after political enemies. It's weeding these types of folks out that have turned the Department of Justice and the FBI into a tool that politicians can use to go after their opponents. And the fact that you think that Joe Biden has to pardon 1,000 people in order to protect them from the FBI just proves my point, Tony. I appreciate the call. Tony's line will be open 303-696-1971.
Burn down the village to save the village. That's what I'm hearing.
We got to change it.
Don't burn down the village to change the
You don't think the FBI needs to be changed at all?
Yeah, sure. I think there are some things to be changed, but I don't come to the same conclusions that you do. I don't come to the same conclusions about it being weaponized necessarily in those cases. So, because the idea of January 6 people, there's some police that were beaten on that day. There were some people broke into the
grandma that walked around praying that got brought up on charges.
Yeah, and I think she saw something that was minor, etc. Yeah, exactly. And so did Ray Epps was charged as well, and yes, and convicted. Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ray Epps was convicted.
Yeah, or at least he pled guilty. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, he was
I
charged.
don't think he was convicted.
I know, but at least he was charged, and if nothing else, he pled because I know he's on probation right now. So yes, yeah. But again, people don't pay attention to that.
And how many?
Don't pay attention to that.
How many BLM rioters have been put into prison?
15,000 have been charged. I don't know the prison numbers, but 15,000 were charged.
Is it like the Denver charging where like they all got dropped?
No.
I think a lot of them got dropped.
Oh, there were a lot that were, but yes.
Dude, you literally had the FBI picking through every possible frame of every video to go after anybody that was involved in January 6th, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Because it's the Capitol. Yes. Just like if people broke in here at the
someone's business isn't as important to them.
Hang on a sec. Someone's business is at a different ranking level than the Capitol, in my opinion. In my opinion, I would rank the Capitol higher than breaking into someone's business. And here's the reason. We have crime that runs here in Denver every night of people having their businesses broken into. But we don't have the Capitol here at Denver broken into in Colorado all the time. The same thing with the U.S. Capitol.
But we did.
To me, that rises to a different level.
Had gunshots fired at this Capitol, and nobody was arrested on it.
But they didn't break in. And I understand gunshots, and yes, we should be going after those people. However, here's the difference. Guns can be fired from dozens and dozens of meters away. You don't have to be there. But these people walked into the Capitol. I'm not against charging the person that shot at the Capitol, but how do we find them?
With the Capitol, we went frame by frame. We went nationally. We released images. Help us find these people. And with riots that destroyed businesses throughout this country, gunshots at our own state capitol, almost nothing. I mean, in Denver, a vast majority of those people had all their charges dropped. And they're mostly like curfew violations.
Yeah.
So if we're going to prosecute the hell out of some people and then not just kind of not prosecute, but nearly dismiss all the charges on the others, yeah, that in my mind screams political persecution.
I disagree because the breaking into the Capitol is a little bit of a different, especially during government business. That's a different thing than the riots that were happening at night. I'm not in favor of dismissing the charges to the people that were involved in breaking into the businesses, and I don't know why there isn't a better investigation of the person shooting the Capitol. However, they could have done that from blocks away. They would not have necessarily been on any cameras that were down at the Capitol at that point. And that's just because of a gunshot, but nobody broke in. Just like there's things that happened outside of the Capitol that people weren't prosecuted for. Some were, but some weren't. And there were thousands of people that were at the Capitol that day that were not prosecuted. It is a minority of the people that were there that day supporting Trump that ended up being prosecuted, and a minority that broke into the Capitol.
All I'm pointing out is that in some cases, we prosecute really, really hard. We put a lot of effort into investigating. In other cases, we don't. And in my mind, that's rooted in political prosecution. All right, we'll get to the phone calls and text. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's that time of the morning. We have to give the people what they want.
Yes, and some people think this is my theme song. I disagree, but first we are going to play America's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. I've spent mere moments this morning scouring the interwebs for really dumb stories about us humans to give them these more ridiculous headlines so we can play this fake radio news game show. And I have to be a little bit quiet because one of the people in charge is like right down the hall. So if they hear us, we are all going to get in trouble, all right? Because this is a giant secret. They have no idea that we are wasting valuable airtime doing something as ridiculous as this. Alrighty, Blake Olson is back, so he's joining us from the newsroom. Jeff Hunt, here are your choices, gentlemen. Hope Allen Bragg doesn't hear about this one. Headline number 2, can't stop the killing. Headline number 3, everything's fine, it's dead. And headline number 4, creating holiday memories.
Oh, we're going with Alvin Bragg.
Yes, hope Alvin Bragg doesn't hear about this one. A Vietnamese property tycoon has lost her appeal against her death sentence for masterminding the world's biggest bank fraud. The 68-year-old is now in a race for her life. The law in Vietnam says that if she can pay back 75% of what she took, her sentence will be commuted to life in prison. So I hope Alvin Bragg doesn't realize that some countries have the death penalty for fraud. Now, it has to be a lot of fraud, but again, don't know what Alvin Bragg's going to try to charge Trump with next time. Maybe he's going to go for the death sentence. I'm just saying. Hope he doesn't hear about this. Not going to be a good thing. All righty. Blake Olson in the newsroom. Your choices, sir. Can't stop the killing. Everything is fine. It's dead. Or creating holiday memories.
Creating holiday memories.
Yes, creating holiday memories. There's a family in southern Connecticut. They created some amazing holiday memories on this Thanksgiving. About 40 people came to the home in Weston. It's an amazing gathering, almost like a family reunion. And now they've got something they can talk about for decades because the house burned down. Yes, it's a $4 million waterside mansion that got engulfed with flames on Thanksgiving, burnt to the ground. Everybody was able to get out. No injuries were reported. But how did the fire start? One of those frying the turkey things in the garage.
Yeah.
Yes,
really?
with all of the
They put
extra.
it in frozen. That's the problem.
Yep. Everything that you see on those videos about don't put it in frozen, don't do this, and it's going to cause a lot of fire. And whatever you do, don't do it inside a structure, especially when made of wood.
Right.
They ignored all of those warnings and all of those videos that we've seen and decided they knew better and dropped the turkey in and whoosh. In fact, the fire spread so quickly by the time the volunteer fire department arrived, there was nothing they could do. The flames had already taken over most of the structure. Yeah,
And
but at
burnt
least
the
everybody's
whole
okay.
thing down?
Yes, the entire $4 million mansion went up. They could not
What?
stop it. Yes. That's how quickly it went up.
Did they
I know.
not purchase fire extinguishers
I have
in
no
their
idea.
$4 million mansion?
Probably not. Those are for the poor's. We don't need those. Yes. All righty. Now, Jeff Hunt, your final choice this morning, sir. Can't stop the killing or everything is fine. It's dead.
Everything is fine. It's dead.
Yes, everything is fine. It's dead. A spokesman from Medicine Bow National Forest is warning visitors that, yes, we are worried about a recent wildfire from a Utah man, but it's okay. The spider is now dead. Yes. On Monday, a Utah man saw a spider while hiking in Springfield, Utah. According to the Desert News, for some unknown reason, he attempted to then light the spider on fire and ended up sparking a 60-acre wildfire.
No.
Yes, 26-year-old Corey Martin, obviously not a Mensa member, was arrested on suspicion of reckless burn and possession of marijuana, not surprisingly, after police discovered a jar in his belongings. The fire has been 90% contained as of late last week. So, again,
I guarantee you the spider survived it.
the part is he's out in the woods. Why are you trying to burn the spider in the woods? I understand. Okay, I can see the idea of trying to kill the spider in your house type of thing. And okay, you should not go with the flame in that specific instance. But he is outside and he decides in the forest where all the wood is to use an open flame in order to kill the spider and starts a 60-acre wildfire. Yes, choices.
It looked like a really giant spider to him at
I
that
know.
point.
Exactly. He was like, it was coming to eat my face. I'm so scared.
God.
It either wanted to eat my face or he wanted to eat my Funyuns because I had the munchies. So, yes, that's the idea. So, just ridiculous.
I'm sure that was involved.
Oh, I know. Well, that is it, gentlemen. That is
All
the
right.
end of You Choose the News. Thank you so much for playing along with me. And back to you, Jeff.
Well, I have a story of a guy. So we were out backpacking in Glacier National Park, which is like grizzly lands forever, right? Grizzly bears everywhere, dead fish everywhere, all that stuff. And we're like bear baiting all of our bags, putting them up in trees and making sure we don't have any bear encounters. And we come across a dude who is just stoned out of his mind. And he has
that way,
food everywhere.
Oh my
that
goodness.
He has just been cooking and eating. And he is asleep with his head in the back of a bear box.
No. Oh, geez.
So it doesn't surprise me people got stoned and lit an entire
spider.
Spider. It's
Light a
really
forest on
big.
fire. Yes.
Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do?
Oh my God, that is so crazy.
All right, so we've got Mary and Brian up next. We do have one open line. What do you think of Joe Biden's legacy? We'll get to that next. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City, and you've joined the Jeff and Bill Show. Apparently, we debate everything, including Pineapple on pizza.
Yes, we did. We did that one morning.
News Talk 710 KNUS. We're talking Joe Biden's legacy. What is it going to be? Goodness gracious. Perhaps, maybe it's the Afghanistan withdrawal, maybe the Ukraine debacle, inflation over 20% combined over his 4 years, hiding his infirmity from everybody, a disastrous debate performance, 12 million people crossing the border illegally, and all the fentanyl deaths. So that's where I see his legacy. Obviously, there are those that disagree, but let's check in on the phones. Let's go to Mary, Wyoming. Good morning, Mary. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, good morning. As far as legacy, I was one of the ones that said that he would pardon Hunter.
Yeah.
And so I want to come out with another prediction that I even think
you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Now, I think a lot of us, even Donald Trump said he probably would, and many of us don't blame him if it was just the gun and tax issue, because it doesn't seem like a lot of people are going to jail on those anyways. But the 10-year, decade-long get out of free jail card, get out of jail free card.
I didn't know you could do that. Has that been done before?
That's a good question.
So can he do that for the rest of his family?
Yes,
can
he
he do the same thing for his brother?
Yes.
For his wife?
Yes. Yes, he can, because the president has absolute pardon authority. In fact, Matt Gaetz.
And for himself?
There are some constitutional questions about pardoning yourself as far as whether or not that's allowed. But we can go back to the Trump administration, and Matt Gaetz, one-time AG nominee, was behind the scenes asking Trump for a blanket pardon, covering everything he had done for decades. So it is not unusual, and yes, it happens.
It is funny to me how much
has it been done before, though.
Yes,
it is funny to me how much our culture longs for Jesus Christ. We all want to be pardoned, but the only person that can really do that is Christ himself. Go ahead, Mary.
No, so I believe that he's going to pardon all the family members that had anything to do with the corruption of the money that they're still looking for. And everyone talks about how the money has not been found. Do you think it was going to be easy to find that $27 million?
Yeah.
That he has gotten from China, et cetera? I never did.
He has financial disclosures. He has financial disclosures. He hadn't made them. His financial disclosures have been open. His business dealings have been open. He's been in government for decades. He was the vice president for Barack Obama, who was supposed to be a secret Muslim spy. So yes, he has been vetted.
But Bill, they all leave office and end up in $16 million estates.
Yes, because they do insider trading and all sorts of other stuff and to enrich themselves. Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't mean necessarily that the narrative about the Biden corruption is true. In fact, James Comer spent almost 4 years now, and he has found, what has he found? He's found, nothing. He's found nothing. Nothing at all.
And I do believe that with the renewed team, I am really delighted with many of the choices that how Trump has come out on the ground running and ready to operate. In a way, I'm going to say that, I'm happy that he didn't get the 20 election, because he would not have been prepared as he is now. He's had a chance to really evaluate and get ready for what's coming. So I think he's going to accomplish a lot of what he says that he wants to get done.
I think that's incredible insight. I agree with you. Thanks so much for the call, Mary. Always great to hear from her. Let's go to Brian Arvada. Good morning, Brian.
Hey, good morning. Now, some of this is hard to listen to. We all know Biden's corrupt. And it's kind of funny that it said, during the halftime show last year, and Biden was mumbling something about cookies. Jon Stewart from the Daily Show said, "Fire everybody," and now the Democrats are pardon everybody. Like, okay, you're not guilty of anything, but I want to pardon everybody. And yeah, they're scared, because failing to prosecute crimes is just as bad as prosecuting crimes that don't exist. And that's what the FBI has been doing with the Democrats for years. Hillary Clinton, server in a resident home, 30,000 emails, bleach bid. broken Blackberries, broken laptops. Where are those laptops? Ask the FBI where those laptops are. They don't know. They destroyed evidence. The FBI did. They're supposed to keep things on file for decades and decades. They don't know where those laptops are. So,
but there's no proof the FBI destroyed them. You made that assumption. There's no proof they destroyed them. They could have just. They actually lost them.
They actually said that they destroyed some of the evidence. They actually came out and said that. So Hillary Clinton failed to be prosecuted over obvious crimes, obstructing justice when you're destroying evidence, Blackberries, all that stuff. So where was anybody about the FBI is not corrupt when they're failing to prosecute? Comey comes out and says, oh, there's not enough evidence to prosecute her. Are you kidding me? But Trump's up on some charges about inflating property values that everybody does. So come on. I mean, it's just laughable if we're going to sit here and say the FBI is not corrupt at this point. And then now all of a sudden it's going to be corrupt because Kash Patel's going to be in charge.
Yeah.
That only people that are saying that are scared or they have the Trump derangement syndrome.
Or maybe Brian, it's the issue that Kash Patel is divorced from reality. And that's an issue, that he comes to conclusions that are not supported by what exists in the real world. And so if he's going to do that, that creates problems. And the issue that I've got is, and I ask you of you and Jeff and the listeners as well, that if you really believe the FBI is corrupt, if you really believe that you have to have someone to get in there and root out the deep state and all the corrupt actors, why are you going with a person that cannot figure out what is real and what isn't? Shouldn't you find somebody that would actually be tethered to reality to go after it? Because he can go chase ghosts all he wants because he believes things that aren't true. And if you think that that's the person that is going to root out all of the deep state, I disagree with you. I want someone, if I'm going to go after the deep state, I want someone that is rooted in facts, rooted in what happens in the reality.
Awards for his successful investigation, prosecution, and convictions of 12 terrorists responsible for the 2010 World Cup bombings for his work under the Obama administration.
Yes, but he was not.
Kash Patel was getting awards for it.
Yes.
This painting of Kash Patel as some bizarre conspiracy theorist that's way out in left field isn't supported by the facts. In fact, it's a conspiracy theory itself.
No, it's supported by what comes out of his mouth. That's it. And he did get those awards and did a good job as part of the team, but was not a lead prosecutor, as he has said and held himself up to be. He was not in the lead in that investigation, but he was part of the team that did a good job. He's also a guy that has said that Italian satellites have switched votes. He's also a guy that has played into QAnon adherent theories. Yes, that's a problem. That is an absolute problem if you're going to try to find the deep state.
And the QAnon theory being that there are rich people abusing young women.
And drinking blood. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff as well.
He never said that.
He posts
Q. You can't say that.
Hang on a sec. When he posts Q and when he says where one go, we all go, when he posts that weird thing that they do, he's adhering to what they believe. He's giving a nod to them.
You're buying into conspiracy theories.
No, I'm not.
I'm
just pointing out what he does.
Years ago, people were called conspiracy theorists and crazy because they thought that Kennedy was assassinated by more than one person.
Yeah.
That was a deep state. And you know what? Now it's just like almost common knowledge that it wasn't just Lee Harvey Oswald. And if he was set up by the CIA. So all this stuff is going to be the exact same way. It's just going to happen a lot quicker because we have technology and information's going to get out. And that's what the deep state and the Democrats are afraid of.
Yeah.
This information getting out. So they want to paint everybody as a radical, crazy.
Yeah. And I appreciate it, Brian. I'm gonna remind everybody of the fact that we do have information out there that Tucker Carlson was given all of the film of January 6th, and he promised to bring out all of the FBI people that were there and all the bad actors that created that. And we heard what from Tucker? Nothing at all. He's got all the tapes. He has all the information, and yet he still has not been able to prove the conclusion that he started with. That's what we have so far.
Iggy's texting that you, Bill, should be the attorney general.
No way in hell. No way in hell should that happen.
Let's get to news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Good morning. 27 and clear. Jeff and Billy in Denver expecting a high of 60 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. our top story, DJT sending a warning to Hamas, demanding the release of all remaining October 7th hostages. In a post on Truth Social, Trump warned that there will be all hell to pay if they are not immediately released before he returns to office on January 20th. In the meantime, what does the president right now who's in office, Biden, hope to accomplish in the next 50 days or so, other than pardon more family members? NBC White House correspondent John Decker on with Jeff and Billy last hour.
I think there are three big items that he'd like to see get done. One is increased funding for weapons for Ukraine, and in fact, a big announcement yesterday made by the National Security Advisor on that front, pressing for stability in Gaza and winning confirmation of roughly a dozen federal judges. You know, the judicial confirmations could bring Joe Biden close to the 234 that Trump accomplished during his first term in office.
Yes, we know. And the Denver City Council is about to consider a ban on the sale of flavored tobacco products in the city. Supporters rallied at the Denver City and County building Monday, with some people speaking during the council's public comment period.
We don't need to keep harming our children. We don't need to keep harming ourselves. We don't need to keep pushing these things into our communities just so people can make money.
Supporters contend that flavored products are targeted at children and teens, among others. A city council committee is scheduled to discuss the proposed ordinance tomorrow. Back in 2021, the council approved a flavored tobacco ban, but it was vetoed by then Mayor Michael Hancock. Eric Haydorn of the American Heart Association told the rally that flavored nicotine products are causing a public health crisis.
Really? 97% of youth who vape report using flavored products, while most report that flavored products are a key reason for use.
What's that?
Health problems. It always amazes me that progressives can find the most minute things to take on while ignoring massive problems, like the fact that 40,000 illegal immigrants have cost Denver's hospital system millions and millions of dollars.
That's a health problem.
But yeah, exactly. And yet flavored tobacco. Way to go get them, guys. Thanks for taking on the tough stuff.
How about we go after dope? How about we go after marijuana? Can we do that?
There are more pot shops in Colorado than Starbucks and
God.
McDonald's combined.
It is,
But flavored tobacco. Good job, guys.
You know what? You smell it. You've smelled it for what now? 15 years, is it? 13 years? You just smell it everywhere. It's like it doesn't even bother them. It's like gross.
Menthol cigarettes. We're going to take on the tough stuff.
I was in New York City over the weekend, and oh my God, you smell it everywhere. Used to not smell that in New York City. You just used to smell the trash and the rats. Now you smell that. Yep. So we'll see what happens there. The trial of a former Washington, D.C. police officer accused of leaking sensitive information to a far-right extremist group is underway in the nation's capital. Prosecutors began presenting their case against a former D.C. police lieutenant. His name is Shane Lamond on Monday. Investigators claimed that the former head of the police department's intelligence branch made contact with the head of the Proud Boys in 2019 and used that link to gather information about the group's activities. But prosecutors claim that Lamont had essentially become a double agent. And we know that the left knows a lot about double agents at the Capitol and in that vicinity, don't they? The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is now investigating the recent Cybertruck crash in California that killed 3 local college students. The 3 were killed on Wednesday when the vehicle veered off the road and slammed into a tree and cement wall. NHTSA officials want to know what led to the crash and say they often investigate crashes that involve electric vehicles with self-driving features. The Broncos with a 2-point lead late in the game last night against the Browns, and then Jaquan McMillan steps up.
As he was headed out of bounds. Here's a pick! Intercepted! And that should end the night. McMillan, the other way. Touchdown, Broncos.
41-32 over the Browns. Jameis Winston, 3 interceptions, 2 pick sixes. Nick Benito had the other, along with another sack to make 11 on the year. Marvin Mims with a 93-yard touchdown reception from Bo Nix, who threw for 294 yards, 2 interceptions, and a very good night.
We just found a way to win the game. These are tough games. Really good defense. They move the ball well offensively, but at the right time, both sides of the ball made plays.
Jaleel McLaughlin, 84 yards rushing for the Broncos. They're 8-5 heading into the bye week. 23 in Castle Rock, 24 in Lafayette, and 27 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on Tuesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
High pressure is firmly anchored across the Rocky Mountain West to the West Coast, so we'll be protected under this veil of high pressure for several days before the weather changes late Sunday into Monday back to a wintry pattern. Until then, it will be mild and dry, upper 50s to near 60 today, low to mid-50s in Denver on Wednesday. In the 50s Thursday, 50s to near 60 Friday and Saturday, increasing clouds Sunday. Sunday night, Monday, our next chance of snow. Meteorologist Don Day on the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
To slap tariffs on many imports starting on Inauguration Day. National correspondent Rory O'Neill joins us. He's going to run down a list of things you may want to consider buying now before prices go up. Good morning, Rory. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Sure. And these are threats of tariffs. Let's underline that part because, look, I think this is part of the art of the deal, right? Where Trump is threatening these tariffs, hoping for action from leaders in Mexico, Canada, and China before he actually imposes them. But it's wait and see.
And it seems to be causing quite a bit of action, especially with Mexico and Canada. But what are the things that we may want to be watching to see tariffs go up on?
Right. So let's assume that the tariffs the president-elect has threatened here all do take effect next year. So maybe this is the time, considering it's holiday shopping season. There are a lot of sales out there already. Now may be the good time to pick up a new phone. Those things are like $1,000 each these days. A 25% tariff adds $250 to the cost. You want to put that money in your pocket. Same for washer and dryer and refrigerators as well, depending, of course, on where they're made. But mostly there are connections to China. Or small appliances. Maybe the hair dryer doesn't get as hot as it used to. The vacuum cleaner doesn't suck up dirt like it used to. The toaster doesn't pop up like it used to. All those kinds of things you might want to pick up now and save 10, 15, $20 compared to next year.
That's helpful. That's quite a bit of things. And I think this is part of the worldview that may be shifting is that, we are a consumer-based economy right now. We have the freedom to buy these things at cheap options, but that may be shifting moving forward. And it may take a while, especially if these tariffs are put on there, for businesses to adjust, especially if they wanted to move their industries back onto American shores, right?
Right. So here are some of the moving chess pieces here. You've got companies looking to move their production out of China, maybe to another Asian country that won't be subjected to tariffs, India or Taiwan or something, or Vietnam is another one. So maybe that's one route they go. Maybe the big companies are stocking up now, saying, well, maybe there will be tariffs in January, but after a trade war, it might only last a few months, so they'll come down. So they're placing their big orders now. And to remind people how tariffs work, Best Buy goes to the TV making company in China and says, we're going to buy 10,000 TVs at $200 a pop. Now they charge us $600, but that's another whole story. But they're going to buy the TVs at $200 a pop. If there's a 25% tariff, That means that Best Buy has to pay the U.S. government $50 for every one of those imported TVs. So Uncle Sam makes off all right, but that $50 price difference, typically Best Buy then passes that on to us. So now instead of paying retail $600 for that TV, we got to pay $650 in order to cover the cost of that tariff. And that's why they say tariffs can be very inflationary. Now, companies like Best Buy may choose to absorb some of that cost, saying, all right, we'll only increase your price by $25. We'll swallow the other $25 cost. But that's all sort of in flux. So right now, we're also seeing a lot of companies, again, stock up on inventories, try to do what they can, maybe even raise prices now by $25. So when they have to raise it by $50 next year, it won't look so bad.
Rory O'Neill joining the Jeff and Bill show. You'll recognize Rory as the national correspondent for NBC Radio. I want to ask you, Rory, your opinion on the likelihood of bringing lots of manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. and what's the economic impact of those. If we are going to start making those Best Buy Samsung TVs here in America, given our wages and unions and other manufacturing costs, what does that do to the price?
I think Zenith was the last U.S. TV company and they haven't made a TV in the States in 20 years. I don't think Zenith is around anymore. Look, they can't compete in terms of the cost and the price of labor. A lot of the automation systems are already overseas, and the margin on these things can be huge. What I think is more likely is what Apple is doing, moving more of its production to India, or doing the U.S. car model where all the parts are made in China and Mexico, but then they, quote, assemble it here in the U.S. to avoid a lot of those tariffs and fees. So, there are ways they can work around it, but there are other ways that will be difficult. A lot of the agricultural products that come in from Mexico, the tomatoes, the avocados, guacamole and salsa are going to get a lot more expensive next year if these go through. And then I'm more concerned about Canada because they sell us huge amounts of timber. That's lumber, all right? That's the wood to build the house. They also sell us huge amounts of oil, the kind of oil we cannot easily replace. So if you're getting more expensive oil, more expensive lumber and wood, that then elevates the cost of everything. That's really inflationary. So I'm much more concerned about the raw materials that we buy from Canada.
Rory O'Neill, NBC National News Correspondent. Last question from me. What is the impact with these worries about tariffs going to be on the average worker? Reason I bring this up is I saw a social media post the other day of a guy that works in a smaller manufacturing house. They've got less than 50 people, but they were notified that their holiday bonuses have been canceled because the company has to stock up on products they believe in pieces that they believe are going to be tariffed in the next year. They've got to get ahead of the curve. What is the impact real world to workers if these tariffs go through or even the threat?
Well, that's just a great example, and I'm expanding on it and making it up, right? So say it's that company that with the no bonuses you described, they make cabinets. Well, if the lumber they use comes in from Canada, you've got the owner of the company saying, gosh, I don't have money. I either buy the wood before it gets 25% more expensive, or I give bonuses. And I think that's a great real world example of what can happen here. But it's the uncertainty that's the big question right now. I know Donald Trump is likely doing this to negotiate, but again, it's putting the squeeze on a lot of company leaders, big and small, who've got some difficult year-end decisions to make because there are questions about whether or not these tariffs will be in effect come January 20th.
Talking to Rory O'Neill, national correspondent for NBC Radio. Now, Rory, I posted a poll on my X account, x.com/Jeff Hunt, a few days ago, and I asked people, would you be willing to pay more if it meant addressing problems with illegal immigration and with fentanyl and drugs coming in? Basically what Donald Trump said, I'm going to impose these tariffs until we solve these problems with Mexico and Canada. And a vast majority, 90%, said they'd be willing to pay more. Are they being honest with how they feel or a little naive in your perspective?
No, they're not. And in many cases, you won't have a choice, right? Because you're going to be going to some restaurant that brings chips and salsa to the table, right? But that tomato and that salsa just cost, and the jalapeno just cost the restaurant a whole lot more, and they're going to have to up the price by $1. You're just going to get angry at the end of the meal, not thinking you're solving the fentanyl crisis, with these things. So good intentions and X polls are one thing, but reality is going to be, hey, wait a minute now. This stuff that we just went through a record high period of inflation. We can't afford to go through this again. But again, I wouldn't count on some of these tariffs happening. This is a lot of bargaining by the president-elect.
Rory O'Neill, national correspondent, NBC Radio. Thanks so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, have a good day.
So here's my question. You hear that this may be coming. Rory did couch it under the idea that, this is a negotiating technique. Do you believe that this is a negotiation technique? Do you think that Donald Trump's willing to impose these? How are things going to change? We are in the midst of possibly a major change in how we understand the economy. And I've been spending time on this book because I'm trying to understand where Donald Trump and even other conservatives may be getting this shift away from global trade and free markets, which was in many ways the hallmark of conservative thinking for a long time. And there's a book out there by Orrin Cass called The Once and Future Worker that seems to be, in many cases, the intellectual foundation for this change that's taking place with Donald Trump and with conservatives. And he's making a broad sweeping analysis of what's happened to our culture, basically making the argument that we're too obsessed as policymakers and economists on consumer welfare, which means, we actually have the economy that we want. The global trade, the free markets, we can buy TVs at low cost, but we need to have a fair analysis of all the other challenges that we're facing, that there's not much upward mobility right now. We've been almost too consumer obsessed in how we measure everything and not looking at the overall health of the worker. And as a result of that, we need to make some policy changes. So I'd love to hear from you all, especially related to tariffs. Do you think that what Donald Trump is doing, threatening these tariffs as it relates to Mexico, Canada, China, and maybe even others, is actually good for our country, is going to make an impact in this country, is going to help? Or are we going to end up with everything being more expensive, less human flourishing, less worker flourishing taking place in this country? And is it going to harm our economy? Give me a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Speaking of Dan Caplis, I've known Dan for well over a decade. This guy is fantastic. He's pro-life, pro-family, and pro-America. Those are the foundational values that we embrace here. And that is important because you want to have somebody that shares your values, right? You go and hire somebody because you saw them on a bus billboard as an injury attorney going by in a case that's really going to matter to your health and to your future. You don't know if you can trust their values. Dan Caplis is the son of a police officer. He's a former seminarian. He's dedicated the last 40 years to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. So Dan's great on the values, but can he win in the courtroom? Absolutely. Listen to this. Dan Caplis is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted that they're the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. And Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So I want you to put his phone number in your phone right now, because chances are you're not in a car accident right now where you need to call Dan Caplis. But when that happens to you, you don't want to be scrambling in the midst of having to call the police, your insurance company, maybe take somebody to the hospital, all that stuff. You want to be able to quickly get a hold of Dan Caplis so that he can help you. Here's his phone number. Put it in right now, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplislaw.com to learn more. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. We'll get to your phone calls and texts on Trump's tariff plan. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
to the Jeff and Bill Show. Just wrapped up a conversation with Rory O'Neill, national correspondent for NBC Radio. He's got a list of things you may want to purchase now if we do end up in a trade war, tariffs go up. Yeah, prices will go up. Now, I asked our listeners that, and they didn't seem to mind too much in light of what we may get as a country addressing some of the illegal immigration and fentanyl problems. But he says new phones, washer and dryer, small appliances, things where tech particularly comes from China, you may want to get now because prices may go up on that.
In the gamer community where I hang out sometimes, there were some shockwaves that went through when he talked about this, because what the price of the systems and controllers would be, plus buying monitors and things like that, and any electronics based on computers and etc., will all be more expensive. One of the things that was in one of the threads in the communities that I belong to, they were talking about the price of the new PS5 Pro that just dropped about 3-4 weeks ago. Oddly enough, the fun part about it is scalpers ran to the stores and grabbed a whole bunch of them to sell them at higher prices, and you can still buy them at the stores. There wasn't the demand.
With that?
PS5 Pro. It's an updated. It's got larger memory, and it's a little bit faster than what the regular PS5 is. It's retailing right now for $700, $699 is what it's retailing for. But if the tariffs hit, it's going to be somewhere between $1,100 and $1,200 is what'll happen to that. And so the gamer community is going, blah, 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 blah. And then when you talk and controllers are going to go from 50 to 75 to 80, somewhere in there. And the same thing for TVs and monitors, and the same thing for the computers. They're just like, whoa, hang on, wait a sec. Yeah.
So one of the guys that's kind of leading the thinking adjustment that's being promoted by conservatives, because if you're like me, you grew up in the Reagan era and the Bush era, it was all free trade. And so as a conservative, you've watched the shift happen and you're kind of like, how did we get to this place where now the Republican president is pushing tariffs? Well, part of the intellectual framework that has been pushed out there has come from a guy named Orrin Cass, and he's exploring in his book from 2018, The Once and Future Worker, a broad evaluation of American society, economics, and public policy. And he basically makes the argument, no, we actually really succeeded. We did a great job in getting what we wanted if your framework is a consumer-based framework. So we can get cheap televisions from China, and we have cheap lawn care services from illegal immigrants and essentially open border policies. But you got to be fair in your analysis of where we are. And part of the analysis is upward mobility stinks. Future generations are not better off than previous generations. And so do we need to reevaluate some of our economic policies and go, well, maybe getting free, or not free, but cheap TVs and having a consumer-based program isn't great. I mean, you look at people that are on federal welfare programs, they all have cell phones, right? So it's a unique system that we've built here. Maybe we need to get to more of what he argues is a worker-centric focus, and it might mean that we have to readjust our perspectives on the ability to buy cheap TVs, for instance. But let's go to the phone lines. What do you think about Trump's tariff plan? Let's go to Peggy, Lakewood. Good morning, Peggy. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning. I have so much to say, and now I have so much more to say.
I love it.
If we had, I think if the gaming is more expensive, I think there might be a world population boom. They might go out and make babies finally.
That's a good one.
And so going back in time to the Tax Cuts Jobs Act of 2017, which was absolutely ingenious of Trump. I'm sure he can do it again. That one, people have become kind of complacent about that. You know, we're kind of becoming entitled to how great it is. So the way it works is you have all of your money during the year. You're guaranteed a refund so long as you filled out that W-4 correctly. It'll be between $500 and $1,000. So the beauty of that is you get to stimulate the economy during the year because you have all of your money during the year. So no more, $10,000 refunds, no more $10,000 balance dues. And that comes in the simplicity of the new W-2 form. So the way the tariffs would work in the tax realm, because that is the other part of what he's saying, is if you make $100,000, take a look at your 2023 W-2s and look at box 2. All of that money you would not be taxed on during the year. So you wouldn't be taxed on any federal tax during the year, is what he's saying. So you'd have even that much more during the year. So
no tax on a federal tax. Help me understand that.
Yeah. So on your W-2, box 1 is your gross income. Box 2 is the amount of federal tax withheld during the year.
Oh.
So what he's saying is box 2 would not happen anymore in the payroll process. You would have that money during the year so that you could afford, more.
Then how does the government make up that revenue stream?
The tariffs.
But isn't that
That's how he's making the money.
That's a tax on consumers, and isn't that just a consumption tax, which, based on economic principles, not artificially, but they impact lower earners more. They are less impactful on higher earners. Isn't he then saying, rather than having something that is more progressive, like a federal tax income system, he's going to a consumption tax, which over the course of history is more punishing to the workers at the bottom of the economic ladder? That, in my mind, prevents what Jeff was just talking about as far as upward mobility. It constrains upward mobility and those people that are near the bottom or even in middle incomes from being able to aspire to chase the American dream. Isn't that the result?
Well, that sounds like a PhD book to me, but it's kind of deep. But again, like if you have $100,000 and you got if you earn $100,000 and $2,000 is in box 2 of your W-2, you get to keep your $2,000. So all of the federal taxes would not be withheld.
Yeah, but what are the impacts? What's the economic impact of the tariffs? Because if you have that $2,000 is taken out of your federal income, yeah, you may have that. But if you're going to spend $1,800, $2,000, or $3,000 more based on the impact of the tariffs, you're losing money. It could be a net push, but even then, the benefits vastly skew towards the higher earners. And I don't know if you would agree with me necessarily, Peggy, but over the past 15, 20 years, the high earners seem to be the winners in the economy. The high earners are the ones that have seen their share of our economic pie expand tremendously. They're the ones that have seen their wages go up by 300%, 1,000%, where the average worker has not. And that's what that would do. Mm-hmm. That tariffing would skew. And so we're giving more to those that already have and taking from those that don't, is how I hear that.
Well, like if you say it's not the cost of the housing that went up, it's the value of money went down. And that's for everybody. And so
in some cases, but even then, even if the value of money goes down, though, it still insulates those at the top because they have all the money. So the people that are impacted by the value of money getting lower, always the people that are most negatively impacted are those in the lower incomes, because there's the one whose dollars do not go as far. If you're getting paid $23 million as a CEO of a company, whether or not your $23 million is constrained to go 15% further or 35% fewer, the impact on your day-to-day lifestyle is relatively minor. But if you're making what would be the median income in America, which I believe is somewhere around $40,000, no, 60, I believe 60, that constraint, it can change a lot. In fact, losing 30% of your purchasing power can mean you might not be able to afford that mortgage. You might be able not to afford that rent. You might not be able to afford that surgery that you need, or even the medical care for your kids. And I think that's the detriment in here, is we're trying to balance the backs on the people that are at the bottom income levels, where that's not really where the money is at this point. That's not where the growth has been.
I think that there's not as many people at the top that make those high incomes. It's very few that make those really high incomes, and they're turning that back around locally by, employing people to do the tasks they don't want to do.
I disagree with that, because
into their cooks, their yard workers, their babysitters. They're turning that around locally.
That they're all paying minimum wage, and they're all paying minor wages to that, even if they're illegal. And sometimes we've seen that that we have illegal nannies and illegal yard care workers. They're not paying minimum wage, so you're paying people a lesser rate. So the impact to them still is negligible. I disagree with the economic multiplier that the rich people are out there spending so much money and they're so profligate in their spending that they drive economic bonuses. That's seen in the middle class. The middle class are the ones that have the economic viability in order to create that multiplier inside of the economic stream when they're spending money.
Peggy, appreciate the call. Thanks so much. Peggy's line will be open 303-696-1971. Hey, I want to talk to you about my friends over at the Black Eyed Pea of Colorado, locally owned and operated by Steve and Michelle. I love this restaurant. It's home cooking, worth going out for. With 8 locations, there's sure to be one near you. When's the last time you took your family to eat at the Black Eyed Pea? My 15-year-old daughter yesterday just asking me, when are we going to the Black Eyed Pea again? She loves the food there. They've got daily specials. They've got senior discounts. Be sure to check out the new menu items. The stuffed spuds, 8 different and delicious baked potatoes. Here's just a few. The chopped steak spud, the sweet pork spud, the meatloaf stuffed spud, and the broccoli and cheese stuffed spud. There's more. Everyone in your party is sure to find a favorite. Make your dinner party, rehearsal dinner, wedding reception, or company event a success with Black Eyed Pea Catering. And no matter what the occasion, Black Eyed Pea gift cards are always great. Whether you purchase them for your spouse, birthday favors, or holiday presents, they have you covered. I love everything about this restaurant, and I know you will as well. Keep it in Colorado. Visit the Black Eyed Pea near you. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's go back to our phone lines. We're talking tariffs here. Ron, Denver, good morning.
Hi, guys. Hey, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Billy on the way tariffs work.
Hey, you're welcome.
My soul is burning right now. But anyway.
Yours and mine both.
Yeah. You're probably getting a shock that I'm agreeing with you. But anyway, the way tariffs work is the tariff is put on a good, and the consumer pays it once it arrives here via whatever the importer is. The importer pays the tariff. But one thing Billy is missing is that the tariff is paid on the wholesale or manufacturing or wholesale value of the good. For example, let's say a good costs $10 retail, but the wholesale value of it purchase is $2. So if you put a 20% or 10% tariff on that, you're paying 20 cents on the $2. And by the time it gets to the retail level, that 20 cents could be, if it's passed along, could be only about 2%. So it's going to affect prices somewhat, but not by that much. However, I think there's going to be a massive downward pressure on prices because the supply of fossil fuels is going to be increased, therefore decreasing the price. And that's going to make everything, put pressure on everything to go down as far as prices go. So there'll be deflation with that respect, but, with the tariffs. And also, Trump had a bunch of tariffs he set in the first term. Biden kept them all, and it was making massive revenue for the government. That's probably why he didn't let them go. But
I disagree with some of the. I disagree with Biden keeping many of those tariffs, and we ended up, because of some of the retaliatory tariffs, we ended up giving lots of farmers across the country billions of dollars in subsidies. And I understand what you mean about the wholesale price, but that it only really do you have an economic streamline effect if you hold all of the chain of production, meaning all of your transportation costs and distribution costs. If you're an importer and you have to get that shoe or something into a retail location, that retailer still has to make their money, and the price is going to go up exponentially, is what's going to happen.
And then things will change, because they're not going to stick with that. And I don't think consumers will as well. Appreciate the call. We'll continue this conversation. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You just woke up in the greatest country in history. We're off and running. We got a whole nother hour planned for you of engaging discussions, critical analysis, most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up in just a second, Adam Frisch. Yes, that one. Former member of the Aspen City Council challenged Lauren Boebert and Jeff Hurd. He's got an interesting piece in the Washington Post about him. He didn't write it, but an opinion editor did. Democrat Adam Frisch learned from his Colorado losses, and the party should as well. We're going to talk to him in a little bit. Let's go back to the phone lines here real quick. Jay Sterling, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning, you guys, and thanks for doing all that you do. If we would loosen up regulations in this country, more manufacturers would be able to manufacture stuff. I understand this go green and all this stuff and all the emissions. I understand that. But if we would loosen up all the regulations, that's what holds a bunch of companies down from building stuff. I don't care if it's a plastic bowl at Walmart. I don't care if it's an alternator for your 85 Chevy pickup. We have got to loosen up the regulations, because that's why we're buying stuff from other countries, because they don't have all these regulations that all these companies have to build it here from all your goods.
Yep.
So therefore...
Yep. No,
I mean, the emissions, they're all worried about the clouds and all this stuff and the weather and it's asinine. It's absolutely asinine.
Yeah, and Jay, I know you because you call here regularly. You're a farmer. I've always found it interesting that those that actually spend time outside and rely upon it are ones that aren't always necessarily buying into all the climate hysteria.
Well, no, as a farmer and a rancher, I mean, we have to, I mean, they start putting regulations on our tractors. You got to put urea in the tractors now. I mean, in the semis that haul our goods, from whatever, that's,
Yeah, but Jay,
now,
what I'm curious about.
The whole point is regulations. If they would lift the regulations here, we would be able to create more jobs here and not have all these things that we ship in from other countries. So if they lift the regulations here, therefore,
here's the question I have,
Jay.
I
build their stuff here.
That to me, that seems way too black and white. And the question I would have is now,
black and white.
It isn't though. And here's the reason why: is what regulations would you lift? Just broad stroke. I'm not looking for things that are specific, but what regulations would you lift that would bring clothing manufacturing more back into the U.S. or electronic manufacturing? Because right now, those countries have a competitive advantage based on inputs of production and the cost, because of the cost. So what would be the regulations that you would change?
Okay, so therefore the cotton farmer, so the person raising cotton, we don't do that, but the cotton farmer wouldn't have to pay so much for diesel fuel for his tractors. He wouldn't have to pay so much for labor. He wouldn't have to do any of that stuff, and then buy urea to put in the tractor, and then have that regulated, just because there's a little bit of black smoke that comes out of the tractor per se, so therefore we could get back to enormity. Then a company that is manufacturing plastic bowls or whatever, or rubber tires, whatever have you, for your car, the same thing. Well, you got your oil industry regulations. Well, you ain't gonna, your car or your pickup ain't gonna be running without a little bit of an oil product to make your tires. But you wanna put all these things and regulations on the oil companies. Well, they need that to manufacture tires here. We could bring our manufacturing back here if we could just take a lot of the dang regulations.
Here's the thing. What I heard from you in the regulations is what you need then is you're telling me that the companies need to make less money and the workers need to make less money. I don't see that happening in the American capitalist system. No, that's what you said. Hang on, wait, Jay, when I asked you what you would do, you talked about specifically, the companies making less and the worker making less. That was the first two things you talked about. And that's
Yes,
exactly.
they're
I can't
making
see them
less
doing that.
because of their high regulations that they gotta
No, you said
perform on.
you said that was part of when we'd reduce the regulations, because we reduce the regulations, you're not going to be able to bring.
No, I said if we do,
Okay.
we reduce them.
Okay, Jay,
Bring
what
the
is-
regulations down.
Jay, what is the difference in a manufacturing job rate of pay here in America versus somewhere in China or Vietnam? What's the difference in the rate of pay?
Quite a bit, but
Yeah.
now you look at what is your price of your goods? No, but you got to look at your price of your goods.
But
Look at
Jay,
the price of your
you're
house,
not
the
going to
price
get
of your-
you're not going to get an American to work for the wages that are competitive there in Vietnam. It's not going to happen.
We've done it all our life. I'm 50
No, we
years old.
haven't.
We've
No,
all
sir.
done it.
No, we haven't, sir. I disagree with you that we don't have the American worker is not going to take the same type of wages that they have in Vietnam. And we have actually, yes, that will happen. And the other part is that ExxonMobil recently, the CEO, talked about the idea of drill, baby, drill. And Donald Trump saying we're going to open up all these branches of the oil industry and be able to do it. And he said, no, not so much, because if they start producing more, they're going to make less on a barrel per oil. They are very happy with where the market is right now. Just because you release these regulations doesn't mean the oil companies are going to go out there and produce more, because based on the laws of supply and demand, their barrel per oil cost goes down. The money they can make, the profit goes down. They're not going to cut into their own profits when they're making record profits right now. They have no incentive to lower the cost they are getting per barrel of oil.
So,
but that's what you're saying would happen. Won't happen.
Bill, the point being that I think on some of the critics of our current economy is, all right, we're basically sending a lot of money to places like China, Vietnam, India.
Correct.
Where we're willing to pay those workers, and what we're getting in return are cheap TVs.
Yes. And that's what the American consumer, and that's what our economic system is built on. Yes.
Well, now it is.
But
Hasn't
what if
always
we
been
created
that
the
way.
TVs
And
here?
there's a
What if we
fair
made the
critique
TVs here?
that where we
They
are
cost more, Jay, a
currently
lot more.
sitting right now with this economy being consumer driven. Everything is about, can you afford this? Can you afford this? Can you afford this? And how cheap can it get? And the cost of a PlayStation and cost of a TV has put us in a position where there are serious downsides. One of those downsides being we have almost no upward mobility taking place anymore. And in order to offset this consumer driven culture that we have now, we take from those that have money and we are engaged federally in redistribution schemes.
Redistribution. Yeah. We're disputing it.
So
distributing it over there.
Can we figure out other ways where our money is not going out the door to places like China and Vietnam? And yes, we may have to deal with higher prices on our TVs and PlayStations, but we're also dealing with negative consequences
here
right now. Yeah. Go ahead, Jay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're creating jobs here. I mean, we're going to have to pay a price. The way I see it, I'm not a very smart, intelligent guy, but the way I see it is it's going to take a year or 2 years or whatever to get back to normalcy to where we start creating our own goods.
That won't happen.
And once we start creating our own goods, our own plastic bowls, our own whatever, our own stuff of any nature, we are creating jobs, but therefore we'll level back out and get to where we'll be self-reliant on our own self. That's like a farmer does, you're self-reliant.
Well,
you have your own chicken eggs. You get your own meat. You get your own.
Jay, you are
self-reliant,
and I appreciate the call. You do, but there are thousands and thousands of farmers that got subsidies because the last round of tariffs tanked both the wheat and the soybean prices here in America, and so those farmers did not rely on their own. Those farmers were given subsidies by the government. Otherwise, and I believe they should have been given subsidies because they would have lost their farms. And the problem that we have is if we go back to the time in which the things were most affordable and our society was more egalitarian as far as upward mobility, that was the time in which we had one of the most progressive tax structures ever. That's how we achieved it. So the idea that we're going to go back.
That's how we achieve the progressive tax structure is how we achieved it?
Yeah, that's why some of those things were affordable. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And one of the problems that we have in this, yes, we go back to the 50s and 60s when everybody talks about housing be affordable and you had a one income family. That was a very, very progressive tax structure. That's part of how we achieved it. Yes, that is how it happened.
How? Explain to me how that happened.
It happened, and we've changed it. It happened because that's how we taxed people post-war. That's what happened. That's the tax structure that we had.
But you're saying that it was the progressive tax that led to upward mobility, and I'm trying to figure out how. Explain how that happened.
Because we don't have time at this point. It's too long and winding, but the idea is that it allows people with the lower incomes to achieve more, and it also boosts wages, and there's a whole long list of things that happen with a progressive tax structure, and that's why you have it. When it gets regressive, you have more of the Gilded Age that we're going into right now because of the separation as far as wealth accumulation. And that's what's happening. The problem that we have with this idea, and I understand what Jay's saying, with the idea of, some of us aren't going to be able to afford stuff. That's going to be a very difficult thing for the American consumer, because right now, the weird part is the average consumer can buy pretty much the same kind of television or cell phone that the richest person in America can. There's a little bit of delineation on the very high end, but we can pretty much buy all the same stuff. And if you're going to tell the American consumer now, well, we're going to change this and you're not going to be able to buy those same things, that's going to be a pushback, because when you're taking it away, it's just like the idea of broadcast TV. If we go back and say, well, we're no longer now going to stream it or allow you to digitally save it, you're just going to have to watch the show when it airs, there would be a revolt. And that's what you're talking about when we go back in the idea that the consumer products and goods are going to be more expensive and that people are going to accept that. Won't happen.
Let's continue the conversation. Adam Frisch is coming up, but first, news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, guys. Great discussion. 30 and sunny in Denver. Expecting a high of 60 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story. Reportedly, here's what DJT told Canada's Justin Trudeau during that dinner at Mar-a-Lago a couple of nights ago. Peter Ducey on Fox.
And tonight we're getting some new details about that Trump-Trudeau dinner from two people who were at the table. We are told that when Trudeau told President-elect Trump that new tariffs would kill the Canadian economy, Trump joked to him that if Canada can't survive without ripping off the U.S. to the tune of $100 billion a year, then maybe Canada should become the 51st state and Trudeau could become its governor.
I love it.
So
my gosh. It's finally nice to have somebody that can negotiate back in the White House, because Joe Biden would have just sat there licking his ice cream.
Right.
Is it
bowing down to the communists from Canada? Last hour, Rory O'Neill was on with Jeff and Billy and says that because of the threats of tariffs, you may want to consider these purchases during the holidays or before DJT takes office.
Considering it's holiday shopping season, there are a lot of sales out there already. Now may be the good time to pick up a new phone. Those things are like $1,000 each these days. A 25% tariff adds $250 to the cost. You want to put that money in your pocket. Same for washer and dryer and refrigerators as well, depending, of course, on where they're made. But mostly there are connections to China. Or small appliances. Maybe the hair dryer doesn't get as hot as it used to. The vacuum cleaner doesn't suck up dirt like it used to. The toaster doesn't pop up like it used to. All those kinds of things you might want to pick up now and save 10, 15, $20 compared to next year.
47 also sending a warning to Hamas, demanding the release of all remaining October 7th hostages. In a post on Truth Social, Trump warned that there will be all hell to pay if they do not and are not immediately releasing the hostages before he returns to office on January 20th. Plenty of people continue to talk about the Hunter Biden pardon. Sure, Michael Singleton on CNN shed some light.
And I can only imagine, as I've talked to a lot of Republicans, if this were Donald Trump, and I know people are going to give him a lot of criticism for the pardons he's already given, but if this were him and Don Jr. or Eric Trump or Ivanka, I can only imagine what the headlines would have been. And I will say, if you're Democrats and you're trying to walk this straight line that we're somehow better than Republicans because we care more about the future and state of this democracy, I think that's trash now. No one believes it. No one believes they've lost all credibility for the facade they portrayed for several years.
South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol declares emergency martial law, accusing the opposition party of sympathizing with North Korea and of anti-state activities. A man is dead following an officer-involved shooting in Lakewood. Police were called to investigate a case of trespassing on Monday near Belmar Shopping Center. Investigators say the officers encountered a man who pointed a gun at them, leading them to use deadly force. The man died after he was taken to the hospital. Prosecutors are expected to finish closing arguments today at the trial of a Long Island Marine veteran accused in the deadly New York City subway chokehold. Daniel Penny is facing manslaughter and negligent homicide charges in last year's chokehold death of Jordan Neely on a subway train. Penny's defense argued that Neely was on drugs and suffered from mental health issues and was threatening to hurt people and threatening their lives when Penny jumped in to protect subway riders. Broncos with a 2-point lead late in the game last night against the Browns, and Jaquan McMillan steps up with a pick six. Jameis Winston had 3 interceptions and 2 pick sixes. Nick Benito had the other.
Winston is picked, intercepted. Benito, goodbye. No flags. Touchdown, Denver.
He also had another sack to make 11 on the year. Marvin Mims, a 93-yard touchdown reception from Bo Nix, who threw for 294 yards, 2 interceptions.
You know, we just found a way to win the game. These are tough games. Really good defense. They move the ball well offensively, but at the right time, both sides of the ball made plays.
Jaleel McLaughlin, 84 yards rushing. The Broncos 8-5 heading into their bye week and trying to hold on to that wild card spot. 27 in Highlands Ranch, 28 in North Glen, 30 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on this Tuesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
High pressure is firmly anchored across the Rocky Mountain West to the West Coast, so we'll be protected under this veil of high pressure for several days before the weather changes late Sunday into Monday back to a wintry pattern. Until then, it will be mild and dry, upper 50s to near 60 today, low to mid-50s in Denver on Wednesday. In the 50s Thursday, 50s to near 60 Friday and Saturday, increasing clouds Sunday. Sunday night, Monday, our next chance of snow. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Interesting opinion piece in the Washington Post over the weekend. Democrat Adam Frisch learned from his Colorado losses the party should too. The Colorado congressional candidate who nearly defeated Lauren Boebert has a plan for rebuilding a winning Democratic coalition. Joining the Jeff and Bill Show is Adam Frisch. Adam, thanks so much for taking time.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning to you. Happy winter.
Likewise to you. Democrats, at least nationally, are looking at you to help build a winning coalition to get the country, from their perspective, back into Democrat hands. Tell us about the coalition. Tell us what you learned running these races.
Well, thanks. For the last 3 years, I ended up 7,000 miles through the prettiest part of our country, western and southern Colorado. I was on the road 20 to 25 days a month for 3 years. So certainly learned a lot and spent a lot of time with Democrats, independents, Republicans. The vast majority of people don't look at themselves through a red, blue, Democrat, Republican filter. They're trying to figure out how to keep their head above water, economically live in safe and clean neighborhoods and go to have their kids in good schools and economic opportunity. And there's the Democratic Party, of which, I was independent for quite some time, over 20 years. I re-registered as a Democrat after a couple decades away to run against Representative Boebert in the February of 22. And, the focus is it's a pro-normal party coalition, which I've been talking about for a long time. And there's a lot of people in the Democratic Party that love to focus on process and rules and not on results. The Democratic Party's lost touch over the past 20 years that 2/3 of the workers in our economy have just felt left out of that conversation. And listening to what you were talking about before about loss of economic opportunity and tariffs and that whole conversation is that. And while it is the economy stupid, my updated conversation is it's the dignity stupid. And the Democratic Party for the last 20 years has been running as what I call the TIS party. You can't have that kind of job. You can't recreate in that way. And you can't get to the economic conversations when you're disrespecting a whole swath of the American public.
Talking to Adam Frisch, former member of the Aspen City Council, who challenged Lauren Boebert, as well as Jeff Hurd. Now, Adam, I feel like there's Colorado Democrats and there's national Democrats. And I do want to kind of separate them out because I think the message could be different to both those audiences. Let's start first with Colorado Democrats. In many ways, Colorado Democrats have never had more power. I mean, they did have a supermajority up until this race, but they control all statewide offices here in Colorado, the near supermajority in both the House and Senate. Colorado, a blue state, went for Kamala Harris, went for Joe Biden, went for Barack Obama. So let's start first with Colorado Democrats. All that time you spent out on the roads, what's your message to them?
I appreciate that comment, but to me, with all the respect to my friends in Denver, and I have a lot of them, it's about a Denver Democrat conversation. And at the 77,000 miles is, regardless of talking to people that were really left or really right or really center or whatever you want to call it, there was this frustration with the great state of Denver. Not the great state of Colorado, the great state of Denver. And I have a feeling a lot of people in Washington State, Minnesota, there's a great state of Minneapolis. There's such an urban focus on the state in Colorado. And I've been very focusing on the Pueblo, people producing ag, ranch, and farming in southern Colorado, people producing really important, responsible energy in the western slope. And the conversation is that a lot of people that are in Denver, with all due respect, they don't understand the trials and tribulations of what it takes to be a producer. And I think at a national level, the Democratic Party has also lost touch with labor and workers and producers.
Hey, Adam, we're getting about every 30 Adam, about every 30 seconds or so, we're losing you. I'm going to have Bill call you back real quick. In the meantime, I want to talk to folks about advanced hair restoration. Look, for many of us, it's happening. Your hair's thinning, your crown's disappearing, maybe hair loss has you feeling your identity is lost altogether. Well, I've got good news for you. It's an incredible yet simple one-day treatment that starts growing your own natural hair the very next day, and it's guaranteed to grow for life. It's the Advanced FUE from Advanced Hair. We've all seen the pills and lotions that come with monthly subscriptions. They help retain what you have, but maybe what you want is your own natural hair permanently in specific areas. From Advanced Hair state-of-the-art facilities to world-class Dr. Tanya Pauls, it's not maybe your hair will regrow. It's guaranteed that your new hair will grow. You decide how much, how thick, and where. It's why Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver. For your free consultation, $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Call 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. So we're going to reconnect with Adam Frisch here. Very, very important insight into the importance of connecting with the voters that are producers, those in labor, those in energy, those in agriculture. Please continue, Adam Frisch.
No, sorry about that. I will tell you, all this talk of 5 and 10G, most of us in Western and Southern Colorado are looking for 1G. So hopefully that worked out a little bit better.
Yeah, you sound great.
No, I mean, I think you're seeing that on the national level. Just people, listen, at the national level, it was 20% of the country was pretty satisfied or happy. And so there was, let's do a change. And obviously, the top of the ticket was making a pitch that they wanted to stay the course, and they just completely lost touch with the daily struggles. Listen, I think when you're talking about democracy, which is important, and the global climate crisis, which is also important, but people understand in 20 years the Earth is in trouble, but in 20 days people have rent to pay, and people are trying to keep their head above water, and they don't want to be called idiots for not caring about what something is like in 20 or 30 years when they're trying to pay rent or trying to pay childcare. And that is a complete loss of understanding of where the majority of the electorate is. And the people that are making decisions in DC are not facing any economic struggles. And so they lose touch with people that are voting for them. And that is a really big problem. My view is that you win and then you try to govern, as opposed to coming up with a lot of policies that a lot of the people are not focused on.
Adam Frisch, former member of the Aspen City Council and political candidate, joining Jeff and Bill live. He had a piece recently, Washington Post, talking about the idea that the Democrats are losing touch with the base of their voters, and the messages that they had during the past campaign with Kamala Harris didn't resonate for a variety of reasons. Now, Adam, I like where you're going with this. One of the things that I have found on the show is a lot of pushback on things like economics, jobs, stuff like that, and I think that part of where the Democrats lost the race was they continued to ignore the anger, the frustration, and the pain some voters and consumers were feeling, whether that be from immigration or lower wages or not being able to afford a house or rent. And the Democrats basically came in and said, no, things are fine. Things are fine. I found this on the show when I kept referring to the fundamentals of the economy are strong, but your pain points are caused by other things, not what you're pointing at. And people had a hard time with that. What do you think about the idea that the Democrats lost and are sort of trying to find their way right now simply because they ignored the anger that was so prevalent inside of the American electorate?
Telling the consumer or the voter that you are feeling things wrong is not a way to earn the trust or rack up a vote or a sale. And again, the hundreds of people in DC that were setting policy and communication they were completely out of touch of where a lot of the people were. And talking about GDP growth and talking about productivity and talking about low inflation, low unemployment, or talking about that, hey, inflation is a global problem. People do not care how much a pretzel costs in Munich, Germany. They care how much their eggs cost at their local grocery store or how much their childcare has gone up. And it goes back to that. And because they were out of touch about the economic stuff, a lot of the voters started to latch on to some of these other cultural conversations, which is a whole nother conversation that we could have later on. But it comes down to economics. And I still make the case is that the Democratic Party was arguing, turn to page 1747 in this 2,000-page bill, and you'll see that your family's going to be better off, in a couple of years. But people are trying to figure out how to keep their head above water. And yes, on a macro level, the economy is the envy of the world on a macro level. But for too long, too many people have not been participating in it. They've had access to low costs for a while, but ever since COVID, and that's a whole other conversation about supply chain and the government spending, is costs were spinning out of control, and people were trying to keep their heads above water, and they were being told by people in DC, you are doing better than you think you are, so vote for me. And that's just a losing proposition. And the fact that a lot of consultants and candidates and incumbents didn't understand that is why they ended up crashing and burn. And when candidates or incumbents did understand that, like Jared Golden up in Maine, who ended up outperforming Harris by 9 points, or I outperformed Harris by about 5 points in our district, came up a little short, of course, or Marie Guzman-Perez in Western Washington, who was also one of the few Democrats in the Trump district, we were focused on local issues and understood what a lot of people's pain points were, and they honored them and tried to make their lives better. And that's what Democrats and Republicans need to do to earn the trust of the local voters and not focus on a party policy platform that is out of touch with the majority of the voters.
Adam Frisch, former member of the Aspen City Council and political candidate, joining Jeff and Bill live. You mentioned COVID and coming out of that a minute ago, and I kind of want to go back to that. I want your opinions on that post-COVID hangover, because we saw inflation go all the way around the world, and we saw many, many incumbents, not just here in America, but again, all across Europe, Australia, where they were thrown out based on what happened post-COVID with the supply chain and inflation. How much of those headwinds, or how much did those headwinds play in the Biden-Harris loss and difficulty selling their message to the American public?
Well, I think you're talking about a couple of different things that are related. Obviously, there is a global pushback against institutional consistency, and there is throw the bums out. And you've seen that across Europe and Asia and Africa, and you see it here. And obviously, the Democratic Party completely didn't understand the extent of we want to throw the bums out. And people are very distrustful of institutions. And you see that over 50 or 60 years, that the government used to get 70% of the support of, do you trust the government to roughly make the right decision? And since 1965, it's gone from like 70% to 15%. And the Democratic Party is based on an institutional party. They're like, trust the institutions, trust the rules of the road, trust the laws, trust the regulations. And two-thirds of the country has not been participating in the economic upside of that. And it was break down the institutions, and Donald Trump tapped into that, I would say, in a very divisive and not a very good way, but he tapped into it. And so if someone's going to tap into it in a bad way, at least someone's tapping into a conversation that a lot of people don't feel like the Democratic Party was listening to. And so, yeah, some of it was on the global markets, but that doesn't, again, people are not going into voter box. I want to give the leading or the ruling class, the Democrats, a break in the United States because people in Germany are also upset. That's not how people are thinking about. And to blame your own inability to understand where your own voters are on global issues does not really work. Obviously, after COVID, there was a huge disruption in the supply chain. And, the country is based on goods and services do not have a supply chain issue. And people were unable to access services during COVID. And so they turned into goods and they wanted to buy a lot of things. And the supply chains cut down and you saw a squeeze on that. And obviously you had a big demand. There were COVID checks going out to a lot of people. Those things stopped. That caused problems. And all of a sudden you saw a variety of ways that you saw inflation. And I say that after spending 12 years working in international finance and some Wall Street stuff before I left New York after 9/11 funerals, attending too many of them. So I understand a little bit about that. And so, again, not acknowledging the pain of the daily lives of too many people trying to keep their heads above water is bad. And what's even worse is when you blame them for actually not understanding all this great legislation that people are passing. And there was some good legislation that was passed in a bipartisan manner as well, but it's going to take a long time. And a lot of that legislation is going to show up in 10 of the 3,000 counties we have. And again, people just want to keep their daily lives, economic opportunity for themselves, economic opportunity for their kids. And they want to have, 80% of us agree on 80% of the same stuff. I know it's hard to believe that, but I can vouch what I feel like. I've done a 77,000-mile focus group over the past 3 years. The problem is a lot of social media and cable news networks, they focus on what I call the angertainment aspect of ginning up the differences. When a lot of people don't just look at themselves as Democrats or Republicans, they look at themselves as parents, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, cousins, workers, fellow church members, synagogue members, mosque members, whatever you want to say. And they just want to be left alone. And they're living 15-dimensional lives, and they're being asked to hop on a one-dimensional conversation. Are you red or are you blue? Are you liberal or you're conservative? And most people are not thinking like that. And candidates need to understand that there's a multi-dimensional way of people's lives and focus on economic opportunity and treating people with respect and dignity.
Adam Frisch, former Aspen City Council member and political candidate, joining Jeff and Bill live. I want your comment briefly on the abortion issue. I personally was surprised that it did not resonate, given what we had seen in the previous election cycles, as strong as I expected it to. It seemed like a lot of people made different choices when, in other election cycles, abortion was an overriding issue. Do you think it was a mistake by the Democrats to focus on the abortion issue? And why do you think it didn't persuade as many voters as we saw just 2 years ago?
So I think if you go back a couple of years to Kansas, when all of a sudden there was a pro-choice initiative that passed in conservative Kansas by 18 points, right? And then you saw it in Montana and Kentucky, and you continued to see it almost exclusively passing across all these different states. What was happening, though, people were separating an issue from a candidate, and you still saw people cross partisan lines to support an issue of having the government out of healthcare decisions, which I'm a big believer of. But when they also figured they would protect the issue through the ballot box and legislation, then they figured out a separate conversation is who's going to look after my family economically. And even though they supported a policy that is mostly backed by the Democrats on having the government not be involved in women's reproductive rights, then they separated, hey, there's some economic conversations going on too. And so I don't think it was cognizant dissonance, if you will, to say, hey, there's people were separating issues of freedom that were backed by the Democrats, which is a different conversation than when they put on their economic hat on a daily basis about how important it is to find politicians, either candidates, incumbents, or challengers that were going to focus on the betterment of their lives, while at the same time they were protecting the freedom of reproductive rights. And so you should not just assume that just because you have an issue on one thing that the candidate that has a lot of other moving parts, because yes, reproductive rights is really important, but so is economic opportunity, and so is neighborhood safety, and so is having some type of policy that is going to reduce the cost of living. And I think voters were smart enough to figure out how to do that. And so in hindsight, the Democratic Party did make a mistake to put so much of their marbles on reproductive rights, which again, I'm very, very supportive of. Under no circumstance along any time of someone's pregnancy is any level of government going to make a better decision than the woman and whoever else she wants to have in those conversations.
Adam Frisch, appreciate you taking time. We've gotten text messages here that people appreciate you coming on, and we should have you more often. So thank you, Adam, for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
We'll make time for you. Everyone have a great week.
And Adam, I'll point this out. You came on while you were running. You've come on afterwards. We've never had Jeff Hurd on this show, even though he is he's the congressman up there. He's never joined us. You do. You're one of the few Democrats that's willing to come and join and have this conversation with us, which I really appreciate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for opportunity. I was happy to be with you all.
Adam Frisch, former city council member in Aspen, and ran against Lauren Boebert, ran against Jeff Hurd, lost both those races, but performed better than the national Democrats. And so Washington Post out with an editorial about him saying, maybe national Democrats can listen a little bit.
Yeah, so. And he had a lot of really strong things to say there, and was very correct on the critique on where the Democrats missed their messaging. And I appreciate his analysis of the blind spot, because I admit I had a blind spot based on the abortion issue. I thought it was going to mean more, and it didn't. And I was wrong about that.
Kind of got to the Mark Udall phase.
Yeah,
where I think
totally
people
did.
were just like, all right.
And you were talking about that beforehand, that you felt it was going to go that direction. You were right about it.
2014, Cory Gardner. All right. Look, are you going to start the new year dealing with the same old joint pain? Stinks getting older, doesn't it? Losing sleep, not able to take walks or do what you love because of your knees or hips. Don't do it. Take action now to get the pain relief you deserve for 2025. Call QC Kinetics now. Say goodbye to shoulder and back pain. QC Kinetics local medical professionals are waiting for you. Their advanced protocols in regenerative medicine have helped tens of thousands of people. I'm talking lasting relief. Imagine a new year without those achy joints. No more pain pills. No more steroid shots. QC Kinetics uses the healing properties of your own body to attack the root cause of your pain, revitalizing your joints so you can move again. This is the future of medicine. If you've been told surgery is your best and only option, you deserve a second opinion. Find out all the natural regenerative medicine and see if it's right for you. Call QC Kinetics. The consultation is free. We've had Joel in the office here. He was in studio talking about it. He is playing more golf now than he ever has. You can use HSA and FSA dollars. Live your best life in 2025 and get started now. Here's their phone number, 303-900-8986. That's 303-900-8986 or qckinetics.com with locations in Aurora, Superior, Highlands Ranch, and the Springs. Will continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Where's the Democrat coalition go now after their losses to DJT? Well, Adam Frisch says you need to get better in touch with the producers, the farmers, the labor, the workers, and trying to project city Democrat lifestyles and living upon the rest of the state or on the rest of the nation is not a winning recipe. And I thought he was right about that.
Yeah, and I think that what he outlined, the Democrats ignored the anger in part of the electorate and the frustration. And instead of saying, no, we understand it, and Kamala tried at little pieces and points to outline it, but they ignored it. And when the Republicans embraced it and said, we hear your anger and here are the solutions we have, whether or not they would work or not, became irrelevant because you only had one party that was listening to that frustration.
Yep.
And so going back and doing some postmortems on shifts demographically in the electorate, I believe that's the reason is the frustration we heard on air when I would bring up the idea that, no, I understand that it sucks going to the grocery store, but the fundamentals of the economy are strong and people would lose their minds on me. Now, factually, I was right. I wasn't discounting your anger or your frustration, and that's the part that the Democrats ignored. They didn't accurately or in a good way point out where those pain points were coming from and how to deal with them. And they didn't have a plan to deal with them either, which is a huge problem.
Well,
Enormous problem.
And that's why Trump's ad about transgender surgeries for incarcerated illegal immigrants was so powerful. Not because trans in itself was the driving issue, but it was like you were, and we would ask people this, and they would say the same thing. You are literally so out of touch with the things I actually need that you're making that, like the idea that would occupy any space in your brain, considering all the problems that me and my family are facing, is just shocking.
Yeah.
And that's why the ad was so effective. Not because there's a whole swath of people that hate trans people, or that's the primary issue that we're debating in this country. It just portrayed Democrats as wildly out of touch with the things that people really needed.
Yeah.
That's why Trump ran it.
Yeah, and Democrats did a really poor job of pushing back on that and providing context, because that was not done during Kamala's election cycle. It was in 2019, and their strongest argument was these policies and procedures were in place during Trump's administration. He didn't do anything about them. And that would have helped diffuse some of that, but they didn't push back at it. They didn't go after it in any way, shape, or form. And so, yeah, that was part of it.
All right, where do Democrats need to go now? Especially maybe Colorado Democrats. They lost the seat of Yadira Keaveo. Gabe Evans is heading in. Jeff Hurd's heading in. Jeff Crank, Lauren Boebert. That's a very strong congressional contingency and delegation heading into Washington, D.C., representing Republicans. The Democrats no longer have a supermajority in the House and don't have one in the Senate either. Is this the great Republican comeback? Is this the beginning of an important Republican comeback? And I'd also like to hear from you all as to what you think Republicans can continue to do to win in Colorado. Give us a call. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Are Democrats just out of touch? You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. In the next hour, are the adults back in control when it comes to foreign policy? DJT with a very strongly worded post on Truth Social towards Hamas. We'll cover that, plus Canada and more. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You just woke up in the greatest country in history. Let's get to work. We've got a whole hour planned for you of engaging conversations, critical analysis, but most importantly, unlike any of those other shows, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Speaking of those other shows, Ross Kaminsky responded to my video in our little discussion yesterday. about
excellent.
planting the flag.
Yeah.
The 710 KNUS flag. So after all the football.
Wait, hold on. Do I have to go fight him? I just want to know.
Well, I'm going to tell you what he said.
Okay, good.
And you might have to get ready for this, Billy Boy.
I have to loosen up a little bit.
After all the controversy between Michigan, Ohio State, and different teams, rivalry weekend, planting their flags in the logos of the other teams.
Yes.
You and I talked about grabbing a 710 KNUS flag and going over to 850 KOA and planting a flag right there.
Absolutely.
In
right
the
there.
middle of the office.
Yes.
For
Or at
them
least
to
in
all
that
see.
front turnaround area they have with the thing. Yeah, the cul-de-sac they got there. Yes.
And
we can do
his
that.
response was good luck, boys.
I love you. That's fantastic. That is wonderful. That is an appropriate response. I like that.
So Ross is on air right now. He can't
it's
respond. He's
fantastic.
doing his show, but no phone calls or texts there.
Yeah.
Just Ross monologue.
Hey, Ross, thank you. That is wonderful, man.
So
that is the appropriate response. I'd like to see it try. That is perfect.
We're upping the game here.
Yes.
now.
Yeah, we
So
may have
now
to
we
just
need a
drop a
710
flag
KNUS
off.
flag.
Yeah, the thing is we can't take one
I
from
don't
the
think
station,
we
et cetera.
have.
Yeah, well, we've got some banners and things for the station, but
Yeah, but we need like a handmade, American stitched 710 KNUS flag.
we'll have to get on that one and then just go plant it over there one day. We could go viral for that. Why not?
Oh, heck
Why not?
Let's have some fun.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
there's no fun to be had between the TV stations.
No,
It's
not
so
at all.
weird. Dude, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege
Yeah, please
here.
do. Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whenever I post about Channel 9, ever, it goes uber viral on X. Like the amount of pent up frustration that Coloradans have towards Kyle Clark and Channel 9 is wild.
Yeah, it is.
Wild. You just post anything. I mean, my biggest reach, my biggest impressions always comes anytime I talk about Channel 9.
Yeah.
And yet, bizarrely, nobody at Channel 4, 7, 31 has figured that out and gone, hey, maybe we'll position ourselves as the anti-Channel 9.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like they're all in the same boat.
Now, I think that some of the TV stations, they don't try to be the anti-Channel 9, but they try to be more straight news because Channel 9 does, in my opinion, skew what they're trying to do and how they tell their stories. And part of what I say that, part of the reason is I routinely go and scroll front pages online because for me, it allows me to take the temperature of the media site. It allows me to judge what they view as the most important stories to communicate to me because they have to organize that landing page. When I arrive at KUSA, when I arrive at KGMH, when I arrive at KCNC, when I arrive at Fox 31, what are the stories they're putting in that stack? And then what are the follow-ups underneath it? That tells me what they feel is in the news values, greatest interest to greatest number of people. And it is interesting to see how Channel 4 and Channel 7 will closely mirror each other when Channel 9 will be out on their own island. It's really interesting to see how they're doing it.
It's not enough to just do news straight down the middle. That's not compelling enough. Okay. Here's what I'm telling the rest of you all, 4, 7, 31. I'm open for business, baby. I will come help you. Just doing straight news right down the middle, quietly in your own little corner, while you have the progressive juggernaut of Channel 9 driving its agenda. And I am telling you, the listeners, the people of Colorado, there's so much pent-up frustration with them that they're not just just quiet little straight down the middle news people. And then you used to kind of like have some competition between these agencies or these news stations. There's no competition there anymore. They're all on the same page. They're all the same, running the same direction. I'm willing to come help. Billy and I will come help develop, some interesting news, maybe a little back and forth, right, left, all that stuff. There's so much opportunity there. They're not taking it.
You know who should do it, honestly? It should be 2. Channel 2 should be the one because
they've got watches 2 right now.
And that's why they should do it. Because there's an opportunity. Yeah, there's an opportunity, and they need to, in my opinion, they need to differentiate themselves from being in the same building as 31. And they have a strong community/underdog brand, I believe, because they always are the forgotten ones. And so because they are the forgotten brand, because they're the smaller dog, in many ways, based on our signal here, we're the forgotten ones as well. We don't have a signal the size of the other two major, not the other three that are doing kind of a news talk thing this morning. We don't have anything similar to KLZ, KOA, or KHW. Our signal's nowhere near what they have.
Way scrappier.
Yep. And so that's what I would lean into Channel 2. That's your delineation. I believe Channel 2 has done a great job in creating kind of a nice community feel. It's kind of a relaxed, fun people to hang out with at times in their shows. And I think they could lean into that. Hey, we're not going to be like that other station. We can give you the same feels, but we're not going to be as skewed. And this is how we're going to approach it. I think Channel 2 would be the one to that could really take this banner and really run with it.
Let's go with it.
Yeah.
Come on, let's expand the Jeff and Bill program.
Yes,
we're big on social media. Let's go into network television.
Yeah, we could do live hits with them. They could come on the show. We could talk to their anchors because some other radio stations do that with the shows in the afternoon, but not us. Yeah. It's not the AM stations, FM stations.
Gabe saying, I have Ross talk about my texts on air from time to time, but they don't opine like you two via text.
Ah, that's nice. Appreciate that, Gabe. But it does say you're also cheating on us. I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you. What do we expect from a Raiders fan? I'd take a double shot there.
Hey, Gabe came in and wore the jersey.
Dude.
Forever mad props to Gabe.
Gabe's amazing. I love Gabe. He's
Tough,
such a good
tough
dude.
season
Yeah.
for the old black and silver and
a rough
black.
one, man. I feel for you.
All right. Breadman had to stop listening to Ross after you guys, or as he was getting Tulsi hating. Also, MAGA is going to make one-income families great again. Women in the workforce lowered wages. Huh.
Yeah. It's in parts, in some, but also the women entering the workforce, you ended up into two family incomes. That's the thing. Breadman and I were going back and forth on the text, and he was talking about the idea that we needed to get back to an economy where it was a one-earner household. And I'm like, that's never going to happen. I cannot see that happening in our lifetimes here in America.
There's definitely a movement among conservatives to personally get back to that.
Yeah, but that's
like when you sit down and you do all the calculations on childcare costs, and yeah, you may not work full-time, 2 full-time, maybe 1 full-time, 1 part-time, but there's definitely internally within conservatives, there's a movement to get back to that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you have to get to a certain income level in order to be afforded that choice. And that's part of the problem as well, because if you're doing a minimum wage job, you got no choice. You can't do it on a one income, even if you're just not doing the child care cost, everything else, you're just not going to make it. Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
All right. We do want to get to your phone calls. Join the conversation, and this audio about Donald Trump and this conversation with Justin Trudeau is amazing. Do we finally have a chief executive of this country that's going to put America first with all these international folks, international issues, Ukraine, Israel, Canada, Mexico, China, Russia? We want to hear from you. Are you very happy that Donald Trump is the new president, or are you concerned about how foreign policy is going to be under his leadership? Give us a call. Phone number 303-696-1971, or text us at the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. Iggy texting, yes, Channel 2. Their new motto is take... Oh, I can't say it. I did not read that before. Luckily I stopped myself. All right.
Good job.
By the way, Blake, if we had Blake on sports on Channel 2, you and I doing the news, that would be worth watching.
Oh yeah, that would be.
You want to go back to network television, man. Blake? Any desire?
Well, I mean, that's affiliate network television. So yeah. No, probably not. Probably, you know what? I did work. I think I've worked at every TV station in Denver.
Really?
Now that I think of it. Yeah.
Who is the best? Who is the best?
I think working at 2 was the best.
Was that? Did you have Ernie Bjorkman?
Yes, I used to work with Ernie. Man, it was awesome.
Ernie's a great guy.
And then the clown Blinky. I was on Blinky's show one time.
You were on Blinky, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
like
gone.
6.
He was long gone before I got there, but I loved it, man. We had one one show a day, and it was awesome. We used to joke, if it's news to us at Channel 2. But but I grew up watching Channel 2 News with with all the other ones because it came on at 9 o'clock, and my grandparents would watch it because they could go to bed earlier. But man, there was a lot of history at Channel 2. It was a great
and they
TV
were
station.
right off of I-25 and Orchard there.
Yeah, they were. And before that, they were on Spear, right across the street from Channel 9. They were right by a funeral home that used to be there, as a matter of fact.
Did I see that Elon Musk purchased the Channel 7 building?
You know what? I heard that coming back, but I don't know if that's if that is rumor. I have no idea. But 2 would be great because they could just use all of Channel 31's video, because all these stations, they're just worried about not being invited to the press conferences and making all the elected officials mad at them. But just do that anyway, and then get the video from 31 and attribute them.
I cannot stress this enough. There is so much pent up frustration at the direction of local news in Colorado.
Oh man,
that
so
literally
scared.
you could unleash and have huge active viewership. People that love you, retweet your content, pushing it out on social media. Nobody does that with the other ones. Look, Kyle Clark has his own little cabal of progressives. Like anytime he tweets about you, you get all these angry comments, and they all have the Ukraine flag in their bios. Oh yeah, they all have the little Ukraine flag in their bios. It's the same. Look, that's who watches Channel 9. But the fact that all the rest of them are like, we're going to quietly just go down the middle and not make any waves. I am telling you, you could unleash a ferocious audience that loves you if you just made yourself the anti-Channel 9.
Well, Peter talked about that for years, man. If he programmed the station and they'd be number one. There's no doubt. And we could do the same thing. Just tell the truth and start with the elected officials and then go down the line. And there you go. Quit
and we don't care at all
happy.
About being friends with Jared Polis and Mike
No,
Johnston.
and then a lot of these people from the newsroom, they go on to work, PR for all the politicians in the city, and you have to be nice to, I like her, but, I like him, but, we're going to have a professional discussion here. Shut up. So just do a real broadcast. I'm right there with you. Hey, if it's news to us. It's 35 and sunny in Denver. Expecting a high of 60 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story: shots have been fired near the D.C. home of Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Reports say Secret Service agents fired on carjackers trying to break into vehicles near her home. The suspects fled, and there are no arrests so far. That's D.C. for you. DJT is warning Hamas to release the October 7th hostages. In a post on Truth Social, 47 warned that there will be all hell to pay if they are not immediately released before he assumes office on January 20th. He adds that those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the history of the United States. Colorado's Adam Frisch, former Aspen City Council member, making national news. He says he knows what's wrong with the Democrats in 2024, including those in Denver.
People producing ag, ranch, and farming in southern Colorado, people producing really important, responsible energy in the western slope. And the conversation is that a lot of people that are in Denver, with all due respect, they don't understand the trials and tribulations of what it takes to be a producer. And I think at a national level, the Democratic Party has also lost touch with labor and workers and producers. Listen, I think when you're talking about democracy, which is important, and the global climate crisis, which is also important, but people understand in 20 years the earth is in trouble. But in 20 days, people have rent to pay.
So you think more like a conservative, and maybe you'll have a better chance. Both Republicans and Democrats are speaking out about Sleepy Joe's decision to pardon his son, Hunter, Scott Jennings, and Shermichael Singleton.
This idea that Hunter Biden is being selectively prosecuted. Now, one of the core criticisms of the Republicans, and Trump specifically, during the Biden years, is that the Department of Justice is engaging in selective prosecution investigations of Republicans. And today, what I hear Democrats saying is, you know what, you're right. Joe Biden's DOJ does engage in selective prosecutions, which is exactly why we need people to come in and clean it out now. There seems to be bipartisan consensus.
And I can only imagine, as I've talked to a lot of Republicans, if this were Donald Trump, and I know people are going to give him a lot of criticism for the pardons he's already given, but if this were him and Don Jr. or Eric Trump or Ivanka, I can only imagine what the headlines would have been. And I will say, if you're Democrats and you're trying to walk this straight line that we're somehow better than Republicans because we care more about the future and state of this democracy, I think that's trash now. No one believes it. No one believes they've lost all credibility for the facade they portrayed for several years.
The White House defended the pardon and said Hunter was singled out with his prosecutions. Byron Donalds telling the press, hey, time to do your job, just like Jeff and Billy were talking about. Biden has 20 shell companies. What do they sell exactly? Influence.
Hiding money, shifting money. And for the purpose, we don't know, because one thing everybody in this room and the American people definitely know is that the Biden family doesn't really have a business. There is no business structure around this family except politics. And since Joe Biden has spent decades in the Senate, served 8 years as vice president, and is now president of the United States, and the family's getting money from various countries and
so audio's terrible there, but you get the idea. The U.S. is sending about $725 million worth of weapons, a package to Ukraine. It includes missiles, ammo, and anti-personnel mines, among other weapons. That's all according to Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Ah, yes, the Democrats in control. They love to ratchet up this stuff. It's your new war party. Get it done before DJT gets in. Reportedly, here's what DJT told Canada's Justin Trudeau about tariffs during that dinner at Mar-a-Lago a couple of nights ago. Peter Ducey.
And tonight we're getting some new details about that Trump-Trudeau dinner from two people who were at the table. We are told that when Trudeau told President-elect Trump that new tariffs would kill the Canadian economy, Trump joked to him that if Canada can't survive without ripping off the U.S. to the tune of $100 billion a year, then maybe Canada should become the 51st state and Trudeau could become its governor.
Yeah, and then they could get rid of the CFL and they could join the NFL, have about 3 or 4 teams up there. Broncos with the 2
Hold on. I would ask you this, Blake. You're sitting there as Justin Trudeau and you just hear that. Like Donald Trump, the soon to be the most powerful person in the world, just downgraded you to governor.
Yes.
Said
just
you can be a little governor in my little fiefdom. I mean, like he
awesome.
Put Trudeau in such a place. I love it. He just downgraded him.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about this next, but you talk about as well the post he had towards Hamas. It is so nice to have a chief executive who is the lead dog now.
Awesome. It is awesome. Actual leadership and a spine. I love it. Strength, peace through strength. Broncos with a 2-point lead late in the game last night against the Browns. Jaquan McMillan steps up with a pick 6.
As he was headed out of bounds. Here's a pick! Intercepted! And that should end the night. McMillan the other way. Touchdown, Broncos.
Jameis Winston had 3 interceptions and 2 pick 6s. Nick Bonito.
Winston is picked. Intercepted. Bonito. Goodbye. No flags. Touchdown, Denver.
He also had another sack to make 11 on the year. Marvin Mims, a 93-yard touchdown reception from Bo Nix. he threw for 294 yards, 2 interceptions.
We just found a way to win the game. These are tough games. Really good defense. They move the ball well offensively, but at the right time, both sides of the ball make plays.
Jaleel McLaughlin, great night, 84 yards rushing, and the Broncos 8-5 heading into their bye week. Lakewood, 32 degrees. In Glendale, it's 33. Denver, we have 35. Jeff and Billy continue on Tuesday morning. Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
High pressure is firmly anchored across the Rocky Mountain West to the West Coast, so we'll be protected under this veil of high pressure for several days before the weather changes late Sunday into Monday back to a wintry pattern. Until then, it will be mild and dry, upper 50s to near 60 today, low to mid-50s in Denver on Wednesday. In the 50s Thursday, 50s to near 60 Friday and Saturday, increasing clouds Sunday. Sunday night, Monday, our next chance of snow. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, Fox News reporting on Donald Trump's post on Truth Social. Trump promises hell to pay in Middle East if hostages are not released before he takes office. Trump's threat comes days after Hamas released a video showing an Israeli-American hostage pleading for his relief. If the hostages being held captive by Hamas are not released prior to when he takes office on January 20th, all hell to pay. Is this a good move? At least 7 of the hostages are still held are Americans. Everybody is talking about the hostages who are being held so violently, inhumanely, and against the will of the entire world in the Middle East. But it's all talk and no action, Trump wrote. Please let this truth post serve to represent that if the hostages are not released prior to January 20th, 2025, the date that I proudly assume office as President of the United States, there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East. And for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity. I have, for the life of me, cannot understand why it hasn't been a bigger priority within the Biden administration, our government, even our media and culture, that we still have 7 hostages who are Americans. Wasn't it a practice that you took American hostages and we just kicked the crap out of you?
No, not necessarily.
I thought it was.
No, it hasn't really been. And the question I've got on this one, I understand, but what's Trump going to do? And the problem I have is he makes this big, strong proclamation. And what I want to know is there's a line in Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs where one of the guys turns to one of their gangsters and says, "You're barking awful loud. Gonna bite?" And that's what I'm curious about. What's the bite? Because this is a really, really loud bark. But what's the bite? Because if there isn't a bite, then his standing, his leadership erodes. And so what is that? Because if it's getting the American troops and military involved in the conflict, now we have questions about, in my mind, who is responsible for dragging whom into a potential World War III, because that's the argument with Biden in Ukraine. But if we become kinetic inside of Gaza, inside Lebanon, and we're doing this, then what is it? Do we expect a response from Iran? Can we be angry at Iran if they respond with military force? So where is this? What is his hell that is going to be unleashed? Because to me, I'm hearing a bark, and I'm curious, how bad is the bite going to be?
One word, Soleimani. That
I don't understand.
strikes fear within the Middle East that Donald Trump is willing to push the boundaries, if necessary, to defend American interests. So, few things. One, What you had with Joe Biden was this, please don't, Israel, please don't go into Rafah. You could push this. Things could get worse. We don't want things to get worse in there. And where they found some of the hostages were in the tunnels in Rafah. All right. And Benjamin Netanyahu had to functionally ignore the president's pleas and go and serve Israel's best interests. Okay. Now I think what Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel have with Donald Trump are much stronger allies that are not willing to put up with this baloney. 7 American hostages, well over a year, taken captive by Hamas. And we're talking about human rights abuses in Gaza, all that stuff. Get the Americans back, finish this thing. And I think you're going to see Donald Trump is willing to allow Israel to do that.
But he's going to allow Israel to do that. Then how is he unleashing all hell? Or where's that? So he's just going to allow
Israel to do it.
To do what?
To go get these hostages. And you're not going to have a president going, please don't go into Rafah.
Wait.
If you go into Rafah, we're going to pull back some of the weapons. You're not going to get some of the American weapons.
But why would that? I mean, again, does that necessarily stop Israel from doing that? I mean, if they really want the hostages back, if they really need them, then why wouldn't they go and get them? The thing is, I don't see
doing their best to do it now, and you're going to have a lot stronger of a partner with the United States moving forward.
But what is the U.S. going to do?
No, we'll have to see.
And that's the problem.
I don't know. I don't know foreign action. I mean, I didn't even see Soleimani's assassination coming, but Trump was willing to do it.
Yeah, but then
Biden was not willing to do it.
But then the Iranians responded, and we did nothing. So it's not viewed the same way. The Soleimani death is not viewed the same way inside the Middle East because of what happened afterwards with Iran. It's not viewed as this big stomping moment for the U.S. I know that the Western part of the world believes it that way, but that's not how it's viewed.
It ticked them off so much that they are now actively trying to assassinate Donald Trump because of it.
It ticked them off so much they launched ballistic missiles at one of our bases.
Yes.
And we did what? And what did we do in response? Nothing.
Well, at that point, did you want us to escalate it?
No, but we didn't respond. And that's the issue. And that's what I'm bringing up the idea that in Iran's mind and in people that believe the way that Iran does about the Middle East, what they saw is that we hit one of their guys. They responded and sent missiles towards one of our bases, injuring over 80 of our soldiers. And the U.S. response was nothing. That for Iran and for their side, that's viewed as a win, just like it's viewed as a win for us for Soleimani.
I disagree with that. It was a win in their perspective. Maybe they had to take a pound of flesh back, but they're actively trying to assassinate Donald Trump because of the Soleimani attack was so out of bounds in their mind.
See, what I've done
and so they didn't just go, well, we launched some missiles. Okay, everything's good.
No, but I was reading. I've read the stuff through Al Jazeera. I've read the stuff through their media, and that's how it was viewed. Is that
that's not how they're acting, though.
But yeah, it is in part because Iran has been rattling their sword repeatedly, especially under the Biden administration, because they do view the U.S. as being a little bit weaker, and that's why they've been so overt in some of the stuff that's been going on with Hamas and some of the stuff that's been going on with Hezbollah. Yeah, that's why they've been so overt, because they feel that way.
Stephen, I think, right, a good text message here, says this is similar to the Reagan presidency and Operation Eagle Claw, the hostages that were held in Iran. Like, you're dealing with a whole nother sheriff in town. And I bet you do see a lot of these hostages released before January 20th.
Yeah, I think the Iranian hostage, I think there was a deal, though, behind the scenes beforehand that was done that had to do that prevented the Carter administration from going forward on some things. So I don't think it's necessarily analogous, but it is a nice idea behind what we're going to do. The question I still come back to is, what is the U.S. going to do? And this is the problem with the statement of, releasing all hell, is how do you follow that up? What does that look like? And if the idea is, oh, okay, Israel, you can go and do this, is that really releasing all hell? Is it? Is that the best? Dude, is that the best that the U.S. can do?
You have Iranians that aren't using pagers right now. The strikes that Israel has been able to make into Iran, even assassinating key Hamas figures deep within Iran.
Yeah,
I heard it was a bomb that was planted like 2 years prior.
Yeah, and that's all under what we call the feckless Biden administration. So again, what is going to be unleashed? That's what I'm curious about.
But
is and what I'm
I don't
worried
think
about.
Anybody knows, right?
I know, and that's what I'm so worried about. is what I hear out of this is that Donald Trump is making a grand threat that he cannot deliver on without getting the U.S. into an entanglement inside the Middle East. I believe that his mouth is writing checks that the U.S. can't cash. That's what I'm worried about. I understand him being the tough guy and putting out the message, but I'm worried that what is the follow through? It's that what I'm hearing is the guy in the bar who's challenging everyone. You don't want to fight me. You don't want to fight me. And then what happens when someone steps up and says, now we're going to fight?
There's evidence that he's willing to go pretty far across the line, even when he was at his first administration going on. But I'd love to hear from people. What do you think of Donald Trump's statement, both to Canada and Justin Trudeau saying, well, maybe you could just become America's 51st state if our tariffs are going to be a problem for you, or his comments about Hamas and the hostages saying all hell is going to rain down on you if you don't release them. Do you like them? Or like Billy, are you concerned about some of the next steps that this may require of the United States? Phone lines are open. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115.
And you know, Jeff, just like we were talking about that, I'm worried about the follow through, that it can Donald Trump back up what he says. I'm going to talk to you about a group that backs up everything that they say and backs up everything that I'm saying here on the air. And that's my friends over at Balance Well Space. Balance Well Space has taken away my pain. I used to be living my life in daily pain. It felt like someone had taken one of those Swiss Army knives, opened up either the large or the small blade, and stuck it into my back. And I walked around with that forever. It had been 20 years that I've been walking around with this pain. It now doesn't exist anymore because of my friends at Balance Well Space. I want you to talk to them, balancewellspace.com, balancewellspace.com, and you have an opportunity to join an open house tonight. Tonight, they've got an open house going on at their facility in Lowry, right across from Hangar 2. Plenty of parking. It's going to kick off at 5 o'clock tonight, and they've got complimentary wine, cheese, crackers. You're going to get to meet the whole staff. You get to see what they do. And most importantly, you also talk to them about bioidentical hormone replacement. You know how middle of the afternoon you start feeling very tired? Wasn't what it's like when you were a kid. Last thing you wanted to do middle of the afternoon was take a nap. It was like punishment. Remember that? And remember when your hormones are going crazy as a teenager and you're just like, yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. In part because your body's not producing the same hormones they did when you're younger. It's just a matter of amount. It doesn't change. It's just you're not producing as many. That happens. Just like an older car doesn't go as fast as when it first came off the lot. We're those old cars. Yeah, we're getting to be that classic age, and so now we got to take care of ourselves a little different. Sometimes you got to have some fuel additives, and sometimes you need some bioidentical hormone replacements to feel like you did in your 20s. Talk to my friends at Balance Well Space. They're going to make an incredible difference in your life because it is all about integrative medicine. You can get all sorts of different treatments all under one roof. Everything from this hormone replacement therapy that's all non-invasive to trigger point injections, regenerative care, physical rehabilitation, wave therapy, neuropathic care, chiropractic care. They've gone to work on me, and now the bumps and bruises and the pain that I used to have doesn't exist anymore. I'm regenerating the meniscus in my left knee. It used to be my bad knee. As we are talking right now. Now it's my right knee that's my bad knee. My left knee is now the good knee. That's crazy. Think about the change that would have to happen in your life where your bad knee, your bad elbow, your bad shoulder becomes the good one. Seriously, what are you waiting for? Reach out to my friends today, balancewellspace.com, balancewellspace.com. They'll do a personal pain evaluation and create a custom plan just for you. But you got to take the first step and contact them first because they can't make that change in your life. I want you to experience the change that I have based on the wonderful work they do. But reach out to them. Go to that open house tonight at 5 o'clock. Balancewellspace.com, balancewellspace.com. And when you reach out to them, tell them you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show because it sure helps us out as well. Thanks.
That's great to hear, Bill. All right, text messages starting to pour in on this one. DJT is going to page the terrorists after the inauguration. Dude, that was like...
That's fantastic. That is really funny. That is really, really funny. Whoever did that one, high five, my friend.
That was
high five.
Mr. Breadman.
Dude, Breadman. Nice done, man. Nicely done. That's
so,
good.
I mean, what is Donald Trump's foreign policy as it relates to these terrorists going to look like? Is his ego cashing checks his body can't cash? Or is this a new sheriff's in town and he is going to put these terrorists, these folks that have hostages, even 7 American hostages, well over a year after Hamas attacked Israel, is he going to put them in the corner and start to put America first again? I want to hear from you. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. 5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. The terrorist, Donald Trump, give us a call.
back to the Jeff and Bill Show. What is Donald Trump's foreign policy going to look like? Well, we're getting a little sense. Here's Fox News talking about Trudeau and Trump's dinner.
And tonight we're getting some new details about that Trump-Trudeau dinner from two people who were at the table. We are told that when Trudeau told President-elect Trump that new tariffs would kill the Canadian economy, Trump joked to him that if Canada can't survive without ripping off the U.S. to the tune of $100 billion a year, then maybe Canada should become the 51st state and Trudeau could become its governor. Right.
But more on that detail with the panel, Peter.
Brett
Thank you.
Baer is trying not to hold back the smile because that is a funny response. It's a funny response. It's a dig. I don't know how Canada continues to put up with Justin Trudeau and why he's still their prime minister. But it is so refreshing from my perspective to have a chief executive, an incoming president who is tough on these other countries, puts America first, is willing to push back on all of them. And I don't know if you saw the response. The response from Joe Biden was, well, gee golly, we might make Canada mad. I don't care. I really don't care anymore of putting the needs of other countries first. I'm so happy to have Donald Trump in that perspective. And it was a bit of a dig. And you don't get a response, get a sense of what Justin Trudeau's response was in that clip. But
and I'm curious what he means by taken advantage of. I'm worried that he's viewing that yet again as the trade deficit.
I think that's exactly what he's
saying. And that scares me because that, again, goes back to, and you talked about it earlier, how several decades ago, how the conservatives were the party of free trade.
Yep.
And trade deficits are not necessarily bad, especially if you are supplying some of the means of input and getting completed goods as the output on the other end, especially given that they are going to be produced at a lower cost and they're more affordable inside of your economy. That's a plus. And some of the stuff that we get out of Canada is a huge plus. One of the callers earlier brings the oil and gas. Some of our refineries are tuned to get the certain type of oil and gas that we get out of Canada versus what we produce here. It's a different level of stuff. And so we're focused on processing the Canadian oil tar sand. That's basically what we're looking at versus some of the crude that we pull out of the ground because we can sell our crude at a higher price than we're buying from Canada. And so it's a net win for the economy. So that trade deficit is a positive for Americans. It allows us to pay less at the gas pump and allows us to produce more goods and services through plastics and other things more efficiently. That is a win. But Donald Trump views that as a loss. And that worries me because that ends up meaning higher prices at the gas pump and higher prices for other goods inside of our economy. And I don't think that's necessarily a win.
Do you think, though, that his comments, and literally he's not even the president yet.
Yeah.
And getting the president of Mexico and the prime minister of Canada, and in the Canadian case, flying to Mar-a-Lago. Like, I need to sit down with this new guy who's not even president yet.
Yeah.
But we need to figure this out ASAP. And then the response you had from Mexico was after the phone call was, oh, yeah, we're going to work this thing out.
Actually, no, it wasn't. After Mexico, because Donald Trump misrepresented the conversation based on what the Mexican president said on that one. And I am not surprised that he had calls with both the leaders because what he said was fairly ridiculous based on implementing a 25% tariff across the board on either of our northern and southern neighbors, especially after he had just renegotiated the NAFTA, the USMCA. That would technically be a violation. Those tariffs would be a violation of the trade agreement that he just signed during his last term. That's an issue. Yes. When someone that is going to be the leader does something that is that strange, yes, you get on the phone and you start talking to them. And what happened?
That was not the reason they called.
Oh, yeah, it was.
No.
Yes.
The reason they called is because every business in Canada and Mexico blew up the prime minister's phone, not in the Hamas, but
and said this is stupid and crazy.
Said, you've got to get ahead of this, call him, visit him, figure this thing out. I thought it was a brilliant move. It was the business community in those countries that drove the president of Mexico and the prime minister of Canada to contact Donald Trump. Well, speaking of businesses, and if Rory O'Neill, who we hosted earlier, was right. You're going to want to get ahead of appliances and the fact that some of those costs in appliances may go up. Our friends at Mountain High Appliance, they've got a huge savings opportunity for you going on right now. Shop like a boss and save up to $3,100 on select Bosch appliance packages. Enjoy a special financing and price match guarantee with exclusive offers you won't find at the big box stores. Visit them today and experience the difference. When you think Mountain High Appliance, or when you think appliances, think Mountain High Appliance. All right, we'll get to the phone lines here in just a second. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's go to the phone lines. Jeff from Alaska. Good morning.
Morning.
How you doing, gentlemen?
Great.
Good. How are you?
Good. I'll get to it quick. We got very little time. I think Americans have become a spoiled, entitled society. I'll
Yeah.
pay a little bit extra to buy made in America because I know our costs. We're not going to get somebody to work for $12 an hour or $1 a day and things like that. As a society as a whole, I don't think there's that many people willing to sacrifice or give anything.
Yeah.
They want the cheapest, fastest way they can get it. We're a microwave, instant gratification society. Nobody wants to work anymore.
I mean,
don't want to
Jeff,
get their hands
to
dirty.
your point, Orrin Cass, who is kind of the philosophical foundation of some of Trump's tariffs moves, he wrote a book called The Once and Future Worker, talks about we have gone all in on this kind of free trade, everything at low costs. And as in any type of economic situation, you're going to have trade-offs. We have cheap TVs. We have low-cost lawn management companies. But at the same time, you have very low upward mobility that's taking place, and maybe we need to reevaluate it. Appreciate the call.
Yeah,
All
give us a
right,
call another
if
day,
you
Jeff. That was
missed
great.
any of the show, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. It's been a wild one. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Now we've got to go find a flag.